kind of jump into the welcome,
I'm going to start recording then.
and then we can move into the icebreaker. So we got some time for it. So, welcome everybody, and good morning. We haven't had a morning meeting in a while since we switched to the 11:30. So, we're really excited to be able to have this one. I appreciate Ellen for putting together the agenda and reaching out to Adam. Really, we knew that we wanted to have an in-person retreat or planning meeting, but it wasn't available to happen until the spring. But Malik and I felt like it was important to get us together for a little bit longer of a meeting, at least once before the end of this year and going into next year, for a variety of reasons. As you all know, last year the governor's omnibus bill dropped to us after the legislative session began. And so it kind of put us in a rough position of not being able to look at it or get feedback on it in a timely manner for what would be appropriate for the governor's office. We've discussed a lot about what the role of this commission should be, and I think a lot of people want to be proactive, and many people want to be reactive to what the governor is doing as well. And so we felt like it was important to have an opportunity today to hear through what the governor's priorities were so that we had, some time to put some thought into that. Additionally, at our last meeting or the meeting before, Pamela had mentioned that she thought it would be valuable to hear from other commissions similar to ours about how they operate. Specifically, the things we were looking at is like, how do we advocate? Are we simply just giving feedback and then that's the end of it? Are we educating? Are we, going to the legislature and speaking about it? We haven't really been sure. We've just kind of, reviewed things that as they came in or have our own pet projects that we're pushing forward. So hopefully at the end of today, we'll have a better understanding of kind of how other commissions work and how they view their roles. We'll hear from the governor's office at 9:45 about their legislative priorities for the year. I understand they're going to be pretty similar to last year. And then again, as we were just mentioning with Alicia, we want to give an opportunity for each commissioner to share. It's not something that we get to do in our monthly meetings very often, but everybody, as they're coming onto this commission, has something in their heart for the reason they're getting on this, right? Like we're not just here to be here. We're here because we cared and we wanted to make an impact. And sometimes when we look at the statute that directs our commission, it's very focused on several bullet points. And I know that we've expanded that a bit. And I think that's okay. Nobody's told us not to do that yet. So really, we just wanted to give time for each commissioner to just share a little bit more about themselves. When I came onto this board, I think the only person remaining from when I started was Pamela. So, I don't know if anybody's heard my story. So, anyways, that's what we wanted to do today is just give a little bit of time for us to be together to look into 2026 and make sure that we're on top of it and not being as reactive as we were last year. So, our agenda, did everybody receive that? Anybody not receive that? It was in the meeting invite. Okay, I'll just go over real quick. 8:30, we're going to do the welcome and icebreaker. The icebreaker is going to be led by Ellen. And then Adam Hansen, who's already joining us right now, is going to be speaking about the Governor's Commission on Senior Services. And then at 9:45, we're going to get a legislative update from ODHS and or the governor's office. We expect that to be Michelle Pfeiffer. We'll have a quick break, and then, as I said, we'll end the meeting today with about an hour for each commissioner to share their story and their interest. And Ellen, you want to take it over for the icebreaker?
Sure. Yeah. And I put a little note in the chat, but I think that everybody's muted, but if you can mute when you're not, check your mute button because the recording, it'll make it hard to hear. Yeah. So the icebreaker today, Casey and I talked about was to a quick introduction to yourself, and we wanted to hear about something hopeful. These are kind of challenging times for lots of people and for all of us. And even, just figuring out as there are changes in, we're doing a lot of things at ODHS where we're changing at child welfare and we're having some, everybody's reacting to the cuts in the SNAP benefits and the concerns for working with all the Oregonians. So with all of these things going on, we want to draw out something that's hopeful and maybe just a story of something that you feel in your own life you're overcoming right now, or that you see that we can be overcoming. or whatever gives you hope in this moment. We thought it would be good to focus on the idea of hope. So you can say your name and then just give us what's giving you hope at this present moment. Um, I can go ahead and start. Um, Ellen Bell, and I'm the coordinator for the commission and employee of child welfare. And I think for me right now, um, I mean, the fall weather, seeing the animals and the birds and being able to walk out in nature. And I'm finding that the more time I can spend in green and nature, the more hope I feel. And it's just a place to renew my spirit. I'm happy that I moved to Southern Oregon and live out in the woods now, which is really nice. And so I have that opportunity. So that gives me a lot of hope. Plus, it's just somehow getting away from all the chatter that's all around us. Um, I also don't use social media, so um, that's something that makes me I have a little bit more hope about the world. But yeah, and I will pass it on to Casey.
So for me, I think many of us have spent the last months or years, in kind of a darker place. And so, in thinking about hope, it wasn't just kind of in our general lives. It was about this commission. It was about DHS. Just kind of hope for everything as we kind of got into this planning meeting. And so, I was thinking about it because sometimes I realize that I'm not a very hopeful person anymore. As I've gotten older, look back into my youth, and I just was such an idealist about everything. And then I think over the course of my like 30s, I got pretty jaded. And then a few years ago, I had my daughter, and I get to see her grow up, and I get to see the joy in her life when she's not bogged down by the details of things that are actually happening in life. And so I look at her and the things like we're getting ready to do a vacation to Hawaii next month, and just the extreme enthusiasm that she has for every small detail, whether, she's excited to lay by the beach, she's excited to swim in the ocean, she's excited to see fish. Just like every single thing about her gives me hope for, just excitement I mean, if anybody's a parent, they see it, right? When you're watching your kid grow up, the innocence that they have. And so that gives me hope is seeing her grow up and knowing that we all have a part to play in giving our kids a better life. And when you're able to block out the noise, I think you're able to appreciate things a little bit more. So that's what gives me hope is my daughter. I'll go on the next person I see on the screen. So Judge Chico.
So, all right. I am just fresh off returning from the judicial conference, which is the 3 days in the year that we get to talk to the other judges from other places. Um, I think a lot of you know I've had a big change in my life since I've been changed from working with actual families in trial court to moving to the Court of Appeals. But I got some really good feedback about the impact that I've been able to make on the Court of Appeals with getting the Supreme Court to talk about the importance of giving the family a real opportunity to make the changes before we change the plan and move kids on to a permanent place elsewhere. And that has been something that I feel pretty proud of, and getting them to give a good tailored chance to families with disabilities that hasn't been a focus of the Supreme Court in the past. So I think that slowly, incrementally, we're making changes, and I also have hope that the state constitution is going to preserve and protect for Oregonians a lot of the things that we're losing on the federal level. I mean, there are going to be bad impacts from losing all the federal support in Oregon. They're on the horizon. We talked a lot about that too. And I'm worried about that, but I do think there's a lot of really good people that are trying to make a difference. Especially the juvenile judges are really focused on, I think, things that are important and good. So we'll try to keep things moving forward for families in the state and making things better for kids along the way. So that's where I am. I'm going to pass it to, I got to scroll to see who else is here, to Jesse. Jesse Powell.
Yeah, just a second. I'm trying to navigate my phone. Anyways, you guys can hear me. I can't get the camera to come off. It's my work phone that I logged on to this morning, and I'm at home, and I don't do very well with Apple phones. But anyways, my name is Jesse Powell. I'm a person with lived experience. I've been a consumer of the child welfare system, grown up through that, and then later on, if came back into it, and exposing my children to it as well. You know, I come with a lot of lived experience in a lot of different areas. And today, what gives me hope is being a parent that is emotionally, mentally, and physically and spiritually there to provide structure and just support for my children, and just to be there for them, to be able to guide them as a father, nurture them, provide for them, and just really be present. Is one of my main mindfulness pieces about being a father, is being mindful about what they need and what makes them successful, and let them grow and become who they are without me trying to impose my past or my wants or my will upon them, and just be supportive to them. So I've really put a lot of effort and mindfulness into being that present parent for them. Outside of a parent, what makes me hopeful is through my lived experience and through the many speaking engagements that I'm involved with, being part of the D3 PAC that's being created here, being on the child welfare system, QCI panels, being on housing committees, on another committee is keeping families together with providing housing support first model, here in Marion County. We just got contracts, got community partners lined up, getting all the things in order, and we're starting to pull families in, and providing them with possible housing foot vouchers and supportive housing model. And it's new here to Oregon and our district, and I've been working on that for 3 years. So just being there to provide my voice, my perspective, and be solution focused. Having opposing opinions and being able to move the conversation forward in a positive manner, and just being compassionate and hopeful, creating system change. Yeah. That's it for me.
You want to call on somebody, Jesse? Or we can just send it to whoever's next on my screen, which would be Alicia.
Good morning. My name's Alicia. I'm on the commission, person with lived experience. I love this question because hope is like where I work at Morrison is what the parent mentor program is all based on, I think, is just having hope for families. And that's what I have is I hold hope for parents that are involved with the child welfare system that they can change and that they can stop the cycle of whatever addiction, mental, just any kind of abuse and all that stuff, that they can stop the cycle and start new with their family. I mean, I'm a testament of that. Like I've been able to stop the cycle and raise my own children, and I have hope for my kids that they faced adversity and that they're going to be successful, and hopefully they don't ever have to start that cycle with their kids. But that's ultimately where my hope lies, is within the families that are involved with the system. I'll never stop believing in them. Pamela.
Good morning. Pamela Heisler, commission member. I think what gives me hope right now is earlier this year, I got a letter in the mail and it was from a neighbor and it said, you know, um, in times like these, it's really important that neighbors band together and support one another. You know, email me if you want to be part of a neighborhood network. And so I did, and it ended up she actually had used some sort of listserv and got the whole neighborhood. And so there's almost 100 families now involved in this neighborhood network. And I just hosted a harvest party at my house for them this weekend as like a quarterly social that we do. We also had a community garden this summer. We're going to have another thing in January. We do, you know, uh, political engagement in groups and like carpool together. And there's a family group, there's a walking group. For me, that gives me so much hope. Now I can drive down my road and I'm like, there's Casey, there's Anna's house, there's Bev's house. And I know that, we'll be able to call on each other if, if things are hard. And we've also just formed a sunshine committee. So, like, if you're having a baby, if you've gotten injured and you can't clean your house, you can message the Sunshine Committee and we'll put together a group to come and help you out. So, for me, that's like the biggest hope, I think, for me in looking at the future and how we do it, and gives me a ton of inspiration. So, yeah. And you can do it in your community too. The woman has like a whole toolkit she made who launched this. So, if you wanted to do it, she's trying to spread the word. And let's see, Malik, have you gone? I don't think you have. Malik.
Um, Malik, commission member. I'm guessing the tracking question is what we're hopeful for or what brings us hope. Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, I have always been a very optimistic human, and I think in this line of work we have to be, or we have to be hopeful. I've seen a lot of folks in social work and doing this work that lose hope, and it shows up in the way that they show up for youth, the community, whatever type of social work that they're providing. And I know that if I ever get to that place of feeling burnt out and losing hope, that I need to take a step back. And so I'm really like cognizant of that. Um, I think in this work that I do with youth, I've seen, as you would imagine, a lot of loss and a lot of suffering and a lot of adversity. And it's the youth that I've seen that I've like worked with for like 3 years to see where they started, to see where they're at now, where I'm like, you got a job, you're going back to school. Like it's a little like things, which that's not little in my opinion. Those are pretty big things. But like just being like, oh, just little excitements and things that really like, oh, you've taken your adversity and you've turned it into something empowering. And I think that's what drives me to do this work. Yeah, I think I'm still doing the work, and so therefore my hope is still here. And so when it's not, I'll know that this isn't it for me right now. So yeah, think that everyone went. So
I think, Adam, would you like to go?
Sure, absolutely. I'm happy to. Thank you for involving me. I'm not a commissioner, I'm a presenter, and I'll be presenting on the Governor's Commission on Senior Services in a few minutes. But my name is Adam Hansen. I work with aging and people with disabilities. I love everything shared this morning on the icebreaker. It's a great icebreaker. I agree. Malik, I love the Golden Girls background. That's very nice. I'm gonna take that and use it on my own as well. And I also love the neighborhood grassroots, sharing community. I think that's excellent, Pamela, and wonderful resource and community. So mine is similar. I think we all kind of shared the same thing where, what gives us hope is kind of looking to children and like growing that next generation and seeing them grow. And mine is similar as well. I have 3 children. One just went into high school and the other is graduating high school this year. And then I have an 8th grader as well. And just kind of seeing them grow and navigate through this kind of different world than what I grew up in, and somewhat concerning world, at times right now. Seeing how they navigate through that and the choices they're making, it gives me hope to see them grow and develop, and hopefully we can build a better world for them. That's usually the goal when we do this type of work. So I appreciate all that as well. So, but thank you for letting me be a part of your icebreaker. I appreciate it.
Of course, and actually, Adam, we're transitioning right into your session. So we're gonna we don't need an introduction because you all just met Adam, but Adam is with the Governor's Commission on Senior Services. And as I was saying in the intro, Pamela had a really good idea of inviting another commission. We are unique because we're the Governor's Commission. So we're, and we're not a licensing board like OLCC. So, all of the commissions are a little bit different, but, Adam runs the Governor's Commission on Senior Services. So hopefully he's able to provide us some insight and then perhaps have some time for some questions at the end. So we'll hand it over to Adam, and welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Dean just joined us, so we might want to, Dean. So, well, yeah. So anyway, just we've been talking about what gives us hope. If you want to quickly introduce yourself, so we know you're here. I think
You're muted.
Ian.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I still haven't had my coffee, and I thought this meeting was starting at 9. My bad. So, what gives me hope is, all right. I'm Dean Salazar. I serve on. I'm a self-advocate for the autistic community, and I've served on the Portland Children's Levy, the Oregon Commission on Autism, which was dissolved this year, and a bunch of other commissions and committees regarding stuff like that in East Portland. So I'm glad to be here. And what gives me hope is well well, in the past couple weeks, not a lot because of all that, all the if you know about the Politico stories about those group chats, and then like how many Nazis it's like what the but yeah but I would say what gives me hope right now actually is the fact that maybe since that's all coming out right now, maybe by 2028 or 2029, all of them will be exposed and won't have to worry anymore. So, or alternatively, what also gives me hope is the fact that I have a feeling that like more and more smart people are coming out of the woodwork. So I am hopeful in that, and I'm hopeful that we get more people with unorthodox perspectives and even ideologies, since I do think that can be very useful in how we look at the world and how we fix problems. So, yeah, that's all.
Thanks, Dean. We'll hand it back over to Adam.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, again, thank you for being here. And once again, my name is Adam Hansen. I work for Aging and People with Disabilities. My primary role oh, there goes my phone. Sorry, it's going to ding for just a minute.
Oh, we can't even hear it.
Oh, sorry, it's loud on my end. I just got a wall clock, and I'm not used to the dinging yet. So, and it's 1 minute early apparently. So, no good. Once again, my name is Adam Hansen. I work for Aging and People with Disabilities. My primary role within the organization is Older Americans Act nutrition programs. So, congregate and home delivered meals, those are usually what people are familiar with. Congregate is where older adults are able to go to a location like a senior center or religious organization, church, community center, those type of things, and receive a hot meal and congregate with older adults, their same age and older. And home delivered meals is for older adults that are just in need of a little bit more extra support, not able to safely and adequately provide themselves and cook for themselves with nutrition. So that need is for individuals to come and bring them some meals. So much like Meals on Wheels model, that's the programs I support within the state of Oregon. So I work closely with AAA's, area agencies on aging, who also offer a myriad of other supports for older adults, but my primary focus is nutrition programs as well as health promotion activities within APD. Alongside that role, I also have a commission role, and I oversee the Governor's Commission on Senior Services. And I talked with Ellen, I believe, about a year ago, where this commission is fairly new. The Governor's Commission on Senior Services has been around for a while. So we've been doing things pretty consistently since the 1965 is when it was stood up. And I'll go through some history with the Governor's Commission on Senior Services. But my primary understanding of this presentation is to share with you what we do as far as Governor's Commission on Senior Services, how we operate, what we advocate for. For the need of all of you, trying to be able to pull some information from what we do and adapt it to your own commission, just as you're starting to build this up. So that's the intent of my presentation. I don't know if I will necessarily take the full 45 minutes, so hopefully there's a lot of good questions and conversation, but I'll definitely share what I have with all the information with GCSS. It's also intended to be a discussion, so if you have any questions as I go through some of this material, just raise your hand, I'll call on you, and we can kind of have a more informal discussion about it if questions do arise. So the history of GCSS, I do have a document here if I'm able to share. Let me see here. That's my Zoom screen. Oh, there we go. Can all of you see that history of GCSS? Okay. So this is a document that we use to kind of share information about the history of who we are. So in 1966, the Older Americans Act, as I mentioned before, those are the programs that I operate. They're all funded by the Older Americans Act. So it is established by the federal government to determine benefits that could be obtained by Oregon's aging citizens. And so with that passing of 1965 Older Americans Act, there was a need to stand up an interagency committee on aging in 1966. And in 1967, that committee was stood up. It's called the Governor's Advisory Committee on Aging. So we've been doing this for quite a while, since the 60s. And really the focus of our goal is to advocate for older adults and older adult needs, specifically in the state of Oregon. So we really work to build up programs and services for older adults. We advocate for legislation for older adults, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as the presentation kind of proceeds. But that's really our primary role, as well as advising the governor on older adult needs. So in 1977, we had some more changes. The Oregon legislature created the Governor's Commission on Aging, which extended the previous commission from 16 to 19 members. 2 members of that are appointed by the governor and also appointed by legislature, so they have to be approved. Currently, right now, our 2 legislative appointees are Tom Anderson and Senator Deb Patterson. So they're on the commission with us, and they work to address older adult needs as well. 1981, they changed the name officially to the Governor's Commission on Senior Services and extended that from 19 to 21. So we expanded once again. And then we've been advocating for older adult needs basically since then. So we've been operating for a while, and I believe we have some pull where we can, but obviously there's commissioners who join on the commission and commissioners who drop off the commission. So there's always a little bit of ebbs and flows, and it's very much changed over the last 60 years or so. So a little bit about what we do, and I'll share one more thing here. This is our Governor's Commission on Senior Services webpage, and it kind of breaks down just a little bit about who we are and what we do. The Governor's Commission on Senior Services, as I mentioned before, is made up of 21 members, including volunteers appointed by the governor. Most are volunteers, and 2 legislators, one from the House and one from the Senate. And the commission studies programs and budgets of all state agencies that affect older adults and people with disabilities. So we have the ability, that's actually statutorily required for us to be able to review programs and budgets and make recommendations to the governor on what we feel is appropriate. Recommends developed a comprehensive plan for delivery services to older adults. So we have the ability to kind of change processes if we would make recommendations to change processes, and promote responsible statewide advocacy for older adults. Our meetings we hold every month. They are public meetings, so individuals of the public are able to attend and be able to share information about older adult needs. So we do regularly have individuals from the public come and present on needs that they have. And we would hear those needs and make recommendations as needed. Every month or so, as I mentioned, we have public meetings, but we also have a executive committee meeting every month as well. And so the cadence of those meetings, we have the second Thursday of each month is our full commission meeting. And then the fourth Thursday is our executive committee meeting, where we kind of have the advising body of the Governor's Commission be able to plan our agendas, move forward legislation, vote on things, that type of thing. Yeah, Ellen.
Yeah, and just one of the reasons we're so happy to have you is because, well, we have the same type of web page, and being a governor's commission, only this commission's only been around about, I think originally formed in, I think it was 16, but the bigger changes and hiring somebody, no, I think it was right before COVID, and it was after COVID when I was hired in 23. But we also do the recommendations and have so many similarities. And I think looking at what you're doing and talking about the recommending and the different things that the commission is doing, and I have attended one of your meetings, and they function very much like ours.
Right.
But what I think one of the things when you're talking about the recommendations and the advocacy, if you could say a little bit more about what that actually looks like on the ground, of how and if you find that effective, because I think in some ways that's where we might be having some hangups is on just the interface, maybe is the best word. So I'm so I love these similarities are so encouraging. So anyway, that's all.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that we're both advocating for vulnerable populations. I think that our cadence and flow is the same, and our statute is the same as well. So I see a lot of similarities with this, and any information you can pull from our commission to adapt to your commission is appreciated, and I'm happy to support that work. Yeah. I'll speak with advocacy and kind of how we've been going about that in just a little bit. Right now, I'm just kind of working through the processes, but we'll definitely get there for specifics on what we've done and how we've done it, if that works. Okay. All right. As I mentioned here, the purpose of GCSS, protect quality of life for older Oregonians. We have on our webpage our bylaws right here that we review every few years. We're about due for an update. Last time it's been updated is 2021. So usually every time we receive a new chair, we review the bylaws. That's also a good time because a lot of the commission members have dropped off and new ones are on as a rotating basis. So it's good to kind of update some of those processes that you have. as I mentioned before, the history of GCSS, that document I pulled from our webpage, we have it right here. So everyone can view kind of statutorily what we are required to do and what we've done in the past historically. Every year, we do have something that we submit to the governor's office as a proclamation for Older Americans Month. That's something we support. And so here is our governor's proclamation for May 2024. And that should be 2025. Not quite sure why it says 2024. And then we have a process here on how to join, application process for new members to be able to go through that process and identify what needs to happen for being able to join. And then we have our meetings here, full commission meetings posted.
Hey, Adam, can I interrupt with a quick question while we're right there?
Absolutely, please.
When on the application process, when somebody applies to be a part of your commission, who reviews those and who puts forward the names to the governor?
Yeah. So every commission kind of has a different process for new appointees. What the Governor's Commission on Senior Services usually does is there is individuals who apply, and then I see those notifications as the board administrator, and I reach out to that individual and just have a conversation with them about what GCSS is, what we do, kind of a lot like what we're doing right now. I just share information about GCSS and get more information from that appointee on why they would like to be a part of the commission, and just kind of have a discussion with them about any sort of questions they may have. After that initial discussion, what I do is I take that recommendation to our executive committee, which meets every fourth Thursday of the month. And any new members new recommendations that I have for them, I present to them at that meeting. We discuss those recommendations. If they'd like to, meet them in personally, I set up another call with that appointee. But most of the time, based on the recommendations and my discussion with them, I'm able to say this person is pretty quality for a commissioner, and then they'd be able to pass it through. After that point, we get the approval of the executive committee. I send that to the board of recommendation, the office of appointments, where they submit that to the governor's office for signature. So there is usually a process. It takes about 1 to 2 months for individuals to be, when they submit the application to when they join on the commission. So a little bit of a time frame. Any questions on appointment process?
No, but I have a question on bylaws.
Yeah.
Somebody else.
Please.
I just had one about Adam. Then all of your members aren't Senate confirmed.
No, only 2.
Okay.
So the
I was wondering about that too, because I didn't know what legislative approved and governor approved meant, like what the difference was. So she just clarified that for me.
Right. Yeah. So legislative appointed, they are approved by legislature to join on the commission, because we do have a statute that the commission does have to exist, and it has to have some legislative representation on it. So 2 individuals, Senator Deb Patterson and Representative Tom Anderson, those are our 2 legislative appointed individuals. Everyone else on the commission does not have to go through that legislative approval process. We just make those recommendations to the office of the governor, the office of appointments, and they come back with a yay or nay. Yeah.
That's a little
we really and I'll talk about the roles on the commission. So we do have a chair, 2 members at large, a financial advisor, and a vice chair. So those were what consist of our executive committee, and then everybody else is a commissioner. Normally, when we try and build our commission, we try and get a wide variety of individuals on the commission from both rural and urban areas, which is often hard to do. It's a lot of recruiting in certain areas where you don't necessarily often recruit. So A lot of our commissioners are from the I-5 corridor, which we're trying to expand a little bit more to receive input from more rural areas in the state. Eastern Oregon has historically been underrepresented by our commission, so we like to kind of build that up a little bit. We usually have a lot of individuals from the I-5 corridor, so trying to get someone else outside of that is usually beneficial. We have a statute on our commission that the individuals have to be at least half of the commission has to be over the age of 60. So primarily comprised of older adults, addressing older adult needs. And as I mentioned before, we try and get a wide variety of individuals with diverse backgrounds, diverse needs, expertise. So we have quite a number of wonderful advocates who have a real focus on variety of different things. So our chair is an educator. We have older adult veterans. We have housing advocates, legal expertise for elder law. Individuals who have primarily focused on like business systems and communication systems. Transportation has been a focus on one of the commissioners. So we really try and get a whole variety of individuals on the commission to make it really diverse and well-rounded. So that's really been our goal, to kind of build up all that expertise on the commission. I feel like right now we have a really good group of commissioners who have been advocates for older adults for years. So it is really like picking and choosing kind of where we want to put our investment in these commissioners to be able to build out this commission to be as effective as possible. So that's kind of the goal. And we do have 21 individuals, but we're always looking and recruiting continually, because we do have individuals dropping off as well as joining all the time. So commissioners are commissioners appointed for 3 years. They can serve 2 terms, so a total of 6 years before they have to drop off the commission for a cycle before they can reapply for a 3rd term. So we do have that option for individuals to be able to be on the commission for a while, 6 years, but they do need to have a little bit of a break before we extend them another 3rd term. But normally we have individuals who stay on the commission for usually about 2 terms before they drop off. And as I mentioned before, continual recruitment is always a struggle to try and get individuals to join and bolster up your commission the way it needs to be. So that's usually been a topic of conversation with our commission meetings, is how do we recruit effectively? All right. Any questions on the application process? I kind of flew over that one a little bit. Okay. So what we do and how we do it. So about a year and a half ago, it was brought about on the commission that we needed to be more effective in advocating for older adults legislatively. There's a few ways that we advocate for older adults, and this is the specifics that Ellen was asking for. One of the ways that we do it is that we receive presentations from certain groups and certain organizations and individuals about specific topics for older adult needs, and they can be a wide variety of topics. Just an example is we had the governor's advisor on housing present to us in June, and he shared a lot of information about the governor's priorities on housing. So we receive those presentations, and we have the ability to write a letter to our commission representative in the office of the governor's office. Her name is Rachel Currens Henry. And we submit that communication to her, who and then submits that to the governor's office, and they discuss. So that's the way we make recommendations directly. And I would say previously we haven't had that type of direct communication with the office of the governor, so that's been a very effective change. It's a way for our commission to share what we need and what we are looking for, and it's a way for them to receive that information and hear it. So that's how we do it. Another example is to advocate legislatively for our needs. That process has been a little bit more difficult in the past couple of years. We haven't necessarily been legislatively active until about this last legislative session. And really, we wanted to focus on how we become more effective in advocating for older adults. So what we did was we put together a legislative committee to be able to look at legislative bills that were possibly coming up for discussion and review within the legislative process. And then we advocate and support those bills. So we had a list of bills that we advocated for this past legislative session. One of those was the state plan on aging. I'm sorry, the multi-sector plan on aging that was brought about by Age Plus. That was to receive, as a state, an older age-friendly designation. And there has to be a number of things that you have to do within that designation to be able to receive that designation. But we advocated for that bill. We reached out to legislators and senators, and we also made recommendations to the office of the governor on that. So we supported that bill. Another one was the restructuring of adult foster home payments. That was one of those things that we felt very strongly about for older adults, that adult foster homes needed to be restructured and receive more funding. So we advocated for that this legislative session, and that one was passed. So specifically, the legislative committee has been a wonderful way for commissioners who want to be able to be more involved in the commission other than just receiving these presentations and making recommendations. These little ad hoc committees that we have, like our legislative committee within the Governor's Commission on Senior Services, has been somewhat effective because they take on that role as commissioners, which has been nice.
Hey, Adam, so how do you handle situations where your commission and the governor's office might be at odds?
Oh, Casey, that is the question. Yeah. So we are an independent commission, and our budget is primarily through APD. So APD does have a little bit of a pull on the budget and how we use that budget. But in reality, we are an independent commission and we can vote on our budget and do what we will as far as in the context of APD's guidance. But yeah, there has been conversation about the ability to be able to tell GCSS what to do and how to do it. That has been a topic of conversation, and it's really it's a balancing act. It can be a balancing act for people like myself who are in charge of the commission, not necessarily in charge, but supporting the commission, and also have roles within APD. So balancing the office of the governor's priorities with the commission's priorities and APD's priorities, it does feel like sometimes you're being pulled in a lot of different ways. Clear communication, I think, is good. Anytime there is really a conflict with that type of thing, we reach out and kind of have conversation with the office of the governor or APD. Just recently, I can tell you a good example of this. So the federal cuts have had an impact on the state, obviously, and APD does have a little bit of shortfall within their budget for the next biennium. So we're trying to save money where we can, specifically with APD. And one of those changes that was just enacted is APD decided they are not going to support statewide travel. So we did have a meeting that was scheduled in person, and APD told us we needed to cancel that meeting, which some of the commissioners had a little bit of conflict with, being APD being able to tell us what to do and how to do it. But yeah, it was a communication. We talked with APD. We sat down and had a meeting with them and just kind of discussed what was needed and how we need it. So came to a conclusion that there might be a possibility in the future to allow us to do something like that. But right now we do need to hold with the budget. So
And my one follow-up question to that, and just as a reminder for the commission, I do have a 9:30 hearing. I have to jump off for 15 minutes. I'll be right back. But do your commissioners serve at the pleasure of the governor? Can she remove you at will?
They can. APD can remove commissioners as well, just because they're involved in the budget process. So independent is somewhat loose term. We act independently, we can make our own decisions, but we do have the agency does have the authority to remove individuals if they are a problem on the commission, or if there's issues anywhere. The Office of Appointments has also the ability to remove commissioners. That hasn't happened in my commission, but it has happened in other commissions, where sometimes the conversation or communication kind of derails in a certain way and looks negatively on the Office of the Governor or APD, and they've had to have conversations and remove somebody. But yeah, normally the commission, they give us the ability to operate the way we need to, and they're usually receptive to anything that we request. But yeah, they do have the ability to adjust if needed.
I have a question, Adam, about back to the advocacy a little bit. When you talk about reviewing bills and supporting them, does that mean you were writing testimony? Were you sending commissioners down to testify? And if you did, were they identifying as a commissioner or as their own independent person, as a community member?
Absolutely. Beautiful question. So there is a process to being able to advocate for the commission. Anyone can advocate as an independent person. And these people on the commission have historically, they're the type of people to go down and advocate and submit testimony, because they are long-term advocates for these things. They've been doing it for years. But as a commissioner, anything that is approved by the commission, something that we want to support, has to be voted on and approved for communication. So if they are speaking on behalf of the commission, that is something that they need to present to the commission and request to be able to do, which they have done. Normally, it comes from the top down. So let's say, aging and people with disabilities wanted GCSS to support the restructuring of adult foster home rates. That is something that we were already involved in. But from top down, APD said, hey, could you do this? So we had commissioners on GCSS wearing their GCSS hats saying, this is something that GCSS supports. So that was already approved. But anything that they want to do independently, speaking on behalf of the commission, you have to be approved. Independently, you can advocate as you need it to. Sorry, that may not have been as clear, Pamela, but yeah. Any follow-up?
Yeah. So on that example, you had it coming from APD.
Mm-hmm.
What if it was something that you as commissioners came up with and you weren't hearing it down from APD? As long as the commission approved, someone could still go and advocate and testify as a commissioner?
Correct. Yep. As long as it was presented to the commission and the commission voted yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, good question. Any other questions on that?
Curious about the budget.
Mhm.
I'll speak to that. How you actually got a budget or how that works, because I have asked Perry about that too, and it seems like a lot of commissions, of course, hers is a little bit different, with both rehab, but just how a commission such as ours or yours, and you all have been around for such a long time, but how that budget gets established.
Mm-hmm. So, man, Ellen, I'm not quite sure when the budget was established and how. But what I can tell you is we have the budget for GCSS to be able to travel, and we receive per diems for our meetings because we're a public body. So that budget comes from the statutory budget. Those are all required within our statute, which I believe the budget comes from probably the statute that we need to have. We do have discretionary funds that we're able to use for things like supporting conferences, sending commissioners to conferences if needed, tabling at events, print material, that type of thing. And that's discretionary. And we do have a small budget that rotates every 2 years biennium. So,
And we don't actually, with the Foster Care Commission doesn't have a budget, but we do have, we have the codes that we can for travel if absolutely necessary or for having an in-person meeting. But this is all very new in the last year or so. Took us a little while to get that established. So I don't believe, and Pamela, you've been around, before me and Alicia, you too. So I don't know what you used as or how. I know you had more connection with the governor's office in previous times for how budgets were done, but just curious because I think that, obviously this is a time where there's not really any money anyway, but we, whatever for those type of things, we're just kind of doing it through child welfare, so just, and it's interesting to know, I don't think it's even in our statute actually in terms of a budget. So, but it is something.
I thought, so it used to be that the governor's office just took care of everything. We didn't really have a budget. They just, if we needed to meet in person, they, gave us space for free somewhere that the governor's office could, and then they made up the money for the lunch or, guest speakers or whatnot. So that's how it was before. I thought when we came under child welfare, Ellen, that they were going to put a line item in the state DHS, budget for us. Did that not happen?
No, I think there is that in the child welfare, but we have the code, I think it's the PCA and we have those codes that then it's basically just a whatever we need, like a request. And if somebody wanted to travel, those are still the things that are not figured out because we don't have a travel coordinator. And I've not been, I'm not that person. And we don't really have anyone that we can go to for that yet. So, I mean, that one's still a little up in the air, but we're not in a traveling place right now either. So, but however, at some point, but we did finally get, for those who qualify for stipends, we finally did get that figured out. So we have that. That's happening. That's cool. But yeah, it's been a process, really just figuring that. So last year, I think when we had, or what year was it? 2024, we had the in-person meeting. We just put forward what we needed through child welfare. Like we need catering for this. And we were in the DHS building in Salem, so we didn't have to pay for anything. But that's how it's kind of gone. It's sort of just we put in what we need, and then it's taken care of that way. But not actually really having a budget or knowing what that is.
So I can share that GCSS works similarly. So up till a few years ago, the budget was very ambiguous. Like it was there, we didn't really, they were like, well, if you need something, let us know type thing. So probably exactly what you're dealing with now. I can tell you that none of our funding comes from the Office of the Governor or the Office of Appointments. It's all through APD. So I would recommend that you work with your leadership to see what you have. But yeah, ambiguous usually is what we were dealing with. I just actually got a number as far as our budget goes on what we can. And then I told the commissioners, and that was probably a bad mistake because then they started like, how can we use this to our benefit, But yeah, any sort of spending that we do on the commission does need to be approved by the commission, obviously. But we do support things like there's Age Plus, Age Friendly Award, older geriatric conference, urban conference. I can't remember the specific name of it, but we have quite a bit of older adult conferences that we sponsor and table at to be able to support that work as well as recruit. We use those for recruiting purposes as well. So that's kind of what we use the budget for. And then I mentioned in-person meetings and travel expenses and all that stuff comes from our statutory budget, not our discretionary. So. I did want to talk a little bit more about advocacy as well. We do have a process within APD and APD leadership. So, historically, I would say APD and the Office of the Governor have had processes where they involve the Governor's Commission on Senior Services, which has been really nice to be able to share what's needed for older adults from our perspective. So we have things within Aging and People with Disabilities called rule advisory committees. Anytime there's rules that need to be updated, we are requested to be part of those proposed changes and discussions. So that's been really nice to be able to involve GCSS within that work. As well as the governor's recommended budget. That's something that we've historically been involved in as well. They kind of talk to us about what they think would be helpful for older adults, and we share our recommendations in that process. So we're involved in that as well. So anywhere you can plug yourself into those type of things, I think is definitely a great way to advocate for your vulnerable population that you're working with and serving. And I think that's GCSS in a nutshell. Any questions or concerns? Yeah, Alicia.
Let me shut my door. Hold on. I just had a question about the bylaws. You were saying that you guys reviewed them when you got a new chair, like every couple of years. Do you review them as the whole group, as the 21 members, or do you do it in the executive committee?
It would be the full commission. Normally we would do that at our in-person. So we the way our in-persons kind of work is we use those for a little bit more heavy hitting meetings. So like strategic planning type stuff for the commission, where we want to go as far as our direction. In the next legislative session, those type of things we use for our in-person. And voting type stuff is usually our in-person. And correct, like reviewing bylaws or any sort of that, like bigger ticket items, we would probably do that in our in-person as well. And we normally have an in-person every 6 months or so. Trying to avoid the snow, we have it in October, and then we have one usually in April or May in the spring. Yeah.
Adam, has your commission recommended bills for the legislature? And if you do your representatives that are on your commission carry them?
So we do. Our process for recommending legislative bills, normally what we do is we meet with the sponsor. So this last one with the multi-sector plan on aging, we had a lot of conversations leading up to it with AARP and Age Plus. Those were the two really big sponsors of that bill. We talked to them on how we can support the bill. We also received information from APD on how to be able to advocate. So we were able to go and vote on what we needed to within our commission meeting, and then be able to go and support that directly by providing testimony, speaking with legislators at those kind of meet and greet opportunities, writing letters to the governor's office. Any way we can support those passing of those bills, that's usually how we do that.
Thank you.
So I would say yes, any and all type advocacy that we can do if we've approved that for something that the commission wants to support. Yeah. And that has to be voted on, and that's a process as well. Any other questions? Process questions, commission questions, historic questions?
That was really helpful.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear. It's the guy. I just want to extend an opportunity to all of you as well. If you'd like to take a look at how kind of how we operate and what we do, our commission meetings are always open to the public. You can see the link to our meetings on the Oregon Transparency meeting website, as well as you can always request to have the link sent to you via me. Just send me an email and I'll put you in contact with all of us. I would also like to recommend any of you who are interested in supporting older adults or have a desire to support older adults or know anybody who is an advocate for older adults. We are always recruiting wonderful people on our commission to be able to continue and support this work. So any way we can plug into all of your networks and have all of your networks plug into us, I think would be beneficial for everybody. So that's really the goal.
That's very helpful, and having attended your meetings, I think, I also have the link, so happy to share that. But just even going on the webpage you showed from ODHS, the ODHS webpage, your meeting link is on there, I believe, as well.
Correct. Yeah.
So anybody could check that out and attend. But much appreciative of all this information and would love this partnership with working with the other commissioners.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's partnership is really the goal. And we can't do all this work when we're just talking to ourselves and discussing all these needed changes with only commissioners. We really need to get out there and advocate, and that's often difficult to do, and that's the hard work for sure. So I appreciate all of you for doing the work that you all do to support your populations that you're working towards, and really, if we can help in any way, the Governor's Commission, and advocate for what you guys all need, I'm happy to support that work as well. I know that this is tough.
You mind putting your email in the chat?
Absolutely.
And that way people can have that. Okay.
Well, thank you, Adam. That was super helpful for us all. I think that answered a lot of other questions for the commission as well. So I'm still here. I'm still waiting on my 9:30 hearing to start. So I've got them both open. But Ellen, I see that Michelle Pfeiffer's not here yet. Would it make sense to take a short break at this point?
She just joined, Casey.
Oh, okay.
But thank you, Adam. Thanks so much. And
Of course, I'm going to jump off here, but I appreciate meeting all of you. And if I can support this work, please let me know.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hi, Michelle. Casey's waiting for his hearing to start, so he's kind of, it was a little delayed. And Adam did put his email in the chat.
Yeah, so I'm still here, but Michelle,
Okay.
real quick, welcome. Thank you for coming to this. We definitely, one of the things that we wanted to do was not have a repeat of last year where we kind of, didn't jump in until the legislative session. So we knew we weren't able to have it in person until next year, but we thought it was important as, we're looking at the statute of what this commission's supposed to do, to have an understanding of what ODHS and the governor's office priorities are. And then, getting your input on what you want from us, if you want evaluation or recommendations or, how you would like us to work with you. Certainly the commissioners may have some, other things that they want to do, but we want to be, as supportive as we can, whether it's giving recommendations or feedback or whatnot. And so hearing your priorities now, I think is important to each of the commissioners so that we, feel like we're doing our due diligence and looking at things and recommending things. So I've told the commission I do have a 9:30 hearing. As everybody knows, Lane County's juvenile court is the most inefficient in Oregon, and they just popped on, so I'll be back.
Thanks, Casey. All right, so for those of you, I think I've met all of you, but my name is Michelle Pfeiffer. I'm the legislative coordinator for child welfare and for OTIS, which is the Office of Training, Investigations, and Safety that does our investigations in residential settings, childcare and agencies, daycare settings, schools, and then of what we call third-party professionals, so dentists, doctors, therapists, folks that are trusted in the community to provide care services for kids. So I appreciate this agenda item. Just to be clear, for short session 2026 coming up starting in February, the agency does not have any bills. So we don't have any bills, we don't have any legislative concepts going into this. Short session for us is much more collaborating with legislators when they have ideas or suggestions to try and be subject matter experts about what works, what doesn't work, what problem they're trying to solve. And then also kind of reacting to the bills that we're not looped in on before the start of session that are just put out there, and we either work to address technical concerns or policy concerns, or at the approval of the governor, we can support something, but that is not very common. So looking at 2026, there are three kind of areas that I'm aware of that legislators are exploring or looking at. Um, the first one is Representative Wright. He is hosting conversations with education folks, and we have our Catherine. I think you guys have met her. She's our child welfare education kind of subject matter expert. And Representative Wright is really looking at instructional time and trying to understand some of the challenges of behavior management impacting instruction time in classrooms. And I think he initially his idea was kind of like pretty far to one side of having kind of automatic suspension or kind of things like that for assaulting a teacher. And like, I think everybody kind of walked him back of like, what? Like that, please don't. And now he's much more at the place over kind of a few months now, much more at a place of, um, looking at training opportunities for de-escalation. I know that he was very interested. This just a couple days ago, there was a meeting on CPI, which is collaborative problem solving, CPS, sorry, collaborative problem solving, and some other things like that, and trying to figure out, how do we create time and money for teachers to be able to do that type of thing? Because those are the main barriers. They need the time away from the classroom, but paid to get that type of training. And then also, those trainings cost, I think what I understood is like each school around like $5,000 or $6,000, if I understood the conversation correctly, which if you compound that by how many schools we have is very expensive. So anyway, that's one of the conversations we're involved in. Again, more in an advocacy role for our kids in foster care and the unique struggles they have with school attendance, with school changes, school of origin stuff, and then really just the reality that our kids are going through pretty traumatic events and they may have disruptive behaviors at school, but we need everybody to kind of be rallying around our kids to be able to keep them in school, receiving their education and whatever supports are needed to wrap around them. So that's been our main role in that one. There's another work group that I just learned about on Monday, so I don't have a ton of information, but Representative Hartman or Chair Hartman of the House Human Services and Representative Scharf were both represented in this, and they had kind of a list of concerns or topics, I would say, that they were interested in. Some of those were the intersection of like family court, so not dependency, but like domestic relations type court, and the combination of that, protective orders when there are concerns of domestic violence, and the intersection with child welfare, and the jurisdiction changes that like you may have one county that issues the protective order for domestic violence, but then it's a different county in which maybe the CPS case or the domestic relations case is, and like how do we figure out all this stuff? So we are participating in that with our domestic violence subject matter expert. I don't know if you've met her, but her name is Sarah Greenwood. She'll be participating in some of those meetings around that topic. They had questions. Oh, Ellen, if you need to interrupt me at any point, please let me know.
Is the judicial department involved in that conversation?
Yeah, as I understood it, they were going to be meeting kind of with the judicial department, kind of different parties individually to hear what their thought of the problem was. I will say for child welfare, um, our leadership had not heard of this being like a significant concern, but we were offering Sarah Greenwood, who does all the consulting on a lot of the domestic violence cases, if she has some awareness of that. So I know it's Chair Hartman and Vice Chair Scharf that are coordinating and leading all of this. We are just answering questions and being available upon the request.
I was just
Um,
going to mention that we have an
oh,
education subcommittee at the commission. Casey's on it, Jesse's on it. Pamela, you're on it, I believe, too. So we were all on it. And they're working with Catherine Seltzer. So we have several things. Can you hear me?
I'm having a really hard time hearing you, Ellen. I'm so sorry.
Pretty muted. But,
Not muted.
Judge, you might need to mute yourself.
I think then.
Well, that's better. That's better. I think there was some background noise happening.
Oh, so we just so in our meeting with Catherine, we're working on some recommendations because there were education recommendations put forward last year. And so it's kind of a follow-up. So it's pretty interesting. And maybe you want to we could stay in touch if you're interested in that, because that's going to be, I think, some of the things that are most concerning, especially around graduation rates and how we can ensure what are some of the steps that need to be taken to improve that. And that's really what we're looking at right now. And we're looking at what other states are doing. So I think that's going to be, we could, there's a possibility for partnership. Anyway, just wanted to put that out on your radar screen.
Yeah.
So we can
Well,
conversation.
and if this group or some key members of this group are interested in talking with really kind of some of the education committee members or leaders in the legislature, I'm happy to give you some of their contact information. I don't need to be a part of it unless you guys want me to, but that's there are definitely a lot of interest on how we make improvements. Representative Wright's bill is not specific to child welfare. We're more just there as representatives of kind of our specific priority
I think that's
population.
really helpful.
But I think I can think of some legislators that would be very interested in those types of topics. So if I
We
can help
also
be
have on
a
that
connection.
on that subcommittee, we have a person from JSIP, and we also have a ODE employee. So we have other folks that are
Yeah.
attending those meetings. So we can, I think there's got to be ways we can affect a good change even in this little short
Yeah.
session.
Yeah. I would so Rep Hartman and Rep Scharf, I'm going to jump back into their work group. So they have kind of this intersection of domestic violence, family court, dependency, or child welfare investigations. Their next subject was about screening youth for sex trafficking. This wasn't necessarily only about child welfare, but they definitely wanted to get some more information about our screening practices, documentation practices for that. So we are connecting them with Liz Alston, who is our subject matter expert on commercial sexual abuse of children. And then the next topics, they were very interested to talk about the 4086 jurisdiction report and around primarily the overlap of law enforcement investigations and child welfare investigations, and if there are certain situations in which one should be really the question was, is there some that only law enforcement should be involved in? we as child welfare are still doing a lot of analysis on those recommendations and are having kind of internal talks with leadership still around kind of what our stance is on some of those recommendations and what the data would look like if some of those things were implemented. Um, so we are open to that conversation with them, but also let them know like we haven't fully settled on where we are. And then there was another, oh, and then I think they wanted to have conversations around the two bills that were vetoed this last session. So the Foster Care Bill of Rights bill and the parent, like they call it the Miranda Rights bill, but I was like,
It's like the
the
same as the foster care one, basically for parents.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So I know that what I just gave them a quick update. We did rule advisory committees to make the updates that we could on those bills that we have authority to make. We are not able to make all of the changes in those bills because they would require some statutory authority, but the things that we can do independently, we have moved forward with. I think that you guys were looped in, or Ellen, I think we looped you guys in on that. I know that the notice will go out in the November bulletin, so that's kind of when it all goes public. And legislators will also be given a time for legislative comment in November. And we'd be looking at, I believe, those rules go into effect at the end of December or early January.
Several
So
commission members have participated on.
yeah. Oh, great. Okay. So I just gave them an update on those. I think I didn't really understand if they were looking at putting forward more legislative changes to that or if they were just waiting to see what's been done in rule. I didn't get a great sense. I will say, like, it felt like a lot of topics that are pretty kind of all over the map. And so I don't really know what they will be moving forward or if they're just doing information gathering, trying to figure out what are 26 priorities. They also did talk about some of these things maybe being a 27 priority. So I don't have a lot of information on that yet, just that they're exploring some of those conversations and inviting people to a table to talk about them. And then the last work group that I am involved in is a group of legislators is continuing conversations around some of the same issues that we attempted to address with the 3835 bill last session. And that is currently being led by Representative Krupp, who is the chair of the House Judiciary Committee. I participated in a very introductory meeting where really the point was for legislators to go around the table that are interested in this topic and say what their main priority of that past legislation was, and then to make kind of some subgroups to have further conversation. Um, I know I have quite a few meetings in the next 3 weeks on my calendar to be present for in a subject matter role. It's been made very clear to me. The governor's office nor the agency is leading any of this work. We are here to be sources of information for legislators as they have their own conversations and create their own proposed solutions. I understand that they are going through a meeting with different interested folks that participated on kind of all sides of the issue. I think right now, as I understand, they're focusing a lot on placement flexibility, both in state and out of state. So, in state for our non QRTP placements, if you guys remember this, it's very strict in statute that it's 60 consecutive days or 90 accumulative days in a year that a youth could be in a non QRTP setting. And looking at how do we have more flexibility in that if a child's going to be there for 70 days because the placement's picked out, but then they are going into temporary lodging or into a strange place, like kind of like they have this placement disruption for a day because they can't go past the 60 consecutive days. This is only about 12 kids at any given time that are in this type of setting, but the number of that like would need an exception is probably like one or two a year. That this isn't like a significant amount, but just trying to figure out have a little bit more flexibility to not have unnecessary disruptions, which we know the special master has said is a contributing factor to temporary lodging. So that's one of them. And then out of state treatment and placement is something else that they are very interested in having conversations of. We continue to have examples of youth who are having barriers to access to care that does not exist in Oregon, or placements with relatives who are therapeutic foster parents out of state, and that technically would be requiring of that provider program to become a CCA. And we are having barriers to that because some of those are LLCs, or they are just not interested in becoming an Oregon licensed provider. We have a situation right now with grandparents who are kind of the main folks that we're looking at for permanency, and trying not to have delays or issues in getting their grandchild to them out of state. So, and it would be under an ICPC. It's just different states do things very differently with private agencies compared to Oregon, where they rely more on some of those private agencies to provide support and services or supervision of foster parents than we do. So just having some struggles there, talking those through, wanting to make sure, the legislature has the information about what some of our kids are experiencing, some of those barriers, and just trying to be a subject matter expert to offer what solutions we could see working, what we see as like not really addressing the problem. That's kind of my role in that meeting. Again, I don't know what will be created for like a legislative concept for 2026. This all feels pretty kind of like it kind of feels like very much at the start of a lot of these conversations, I guess is what I'm saying. So I don't have a lot of updates other than there's a lot of talk. I think the main thing for our GR team this session is we're facing a lot of budget worries, constraints. I think we have a lot of worries about like for me, child welfare, I have a lot of worries about the impacts to SNAP eligibility changing, and how that's going to impact families, how that increases family stressors, what this means for a lot of different things for our families. I think you guys maybe hopefully have talked about um, the exception being removed for kids who have experienced foster care, not having to do they don't have the able-bodied exception anymore. So worried about that too for some of our youth who are figuring out how to get on their feet as young people. And now we'll have work requirements if they were to access SNAP. So there's just a lot, right? That all feels very compounding. I think for me, I keep thinking about how do we have a narrative that's a struggle, right? Because sometimes, I think as you guys know, sometimes the media will paint things as like, if we see an increase in foster care, if we see an increase in bad outcomes for kids with their families, that somehow that's indicative of child welfare failure. And some of this is environmental impacts that no matter what we do, we're going to see increased stressors. We're going to see unfortunate situations with children, and how to kind of keep that in mind, right? As all of us work to figuring out how to support families with less resources, increased stressors for our own staff, right? Like this isn't just about families, but it's compounding everywhere. So I say that because I think, there's a lot of work that's going on right now to focus child welfare on safety practices. And I just want to say that I really hope that that can be seen as happening in this same environment. So even if we're making all these safety improvements and the dial doesn't look like it's changing that drastically, that we understand that's also happening in a time of a lot of crisis and stress, that like that isn't necessarily a correlation if we don't see significant changes in foster care rates or substantiated rates or whatever it is. Like we got to measure our success in improving safety kind of in a multifaceted way. So I think that's important for all of you to to be aware of too, that we're kind of trying to figure out how to measure some of those things in more nuanced ways. Yeah.
Is there a strategy for working with the e-board to try and fill some of those holes, or is there just the e-board doesn't have money either?
There's no money. I mean, really, we're looking at reductions right now. There's a lot of work happening to say what are we federally or state mandated to do, and everything else is being considered discretionary. And anything that's discretionary is, potentially on a reduction list, unless the legislature wants to change what is state mandated, right? And that would take legislative change. Um, it already, like, I don't know if you guys have known, but like like already, like, any out of state travel has stopped for the state. Like, there are already budget constraints happening within the state, um, all kind of preparing for reduction. So I think it is going to be very difficult to ask for anything in this environment. I think if anything, like, new or expanded programs in the past few years are being looked at of like, do we want to continue those, or is that something that rolls back? Like, we're just in a really difficult, and this is for all state agencies, but like, DHS is a huge, we get a lot of general fund. We're also going to be impacted by federal funding or the lack thereof. Um, and all of that is uh, brings a lot of unknowns, a lot of questions. I think, our 4E is like, there's constant kind of conversation about if we're not in compliance with some of the federal perspectives on religious rights or things like that, that they could say that they're not going to give us Title 4E. It's like, I think you probably all saw some of the Trump administration looking at our licensing, our certification of foster parents, and if we violated religious rights by saying you need to be affirming of our LGBTQIA plus community or other needs of our kids.
Oh my God.
We're just in a precarious, I mean, like, this is just it's just a hard time. I think the other one is, I think we're still waiting for directive, but with the government shutdown, it's very hard to get directives right now from the federal government because they're non-existent. Is around at one point there was some guidance that 4E would not cover undocumented youth or youth that are not here, quote unquote, legally. And I know that brought us a lot of questions about, like, well, if we're going to have to pay for their foster care and for all of their care, I mean, it's not uncommon for kids to come to Oregon having been a victim of sex trafficking, um, or exploitation, and they find themselves in Oregon, and we are caring for them when they are found. And the thought of having to have that be state funded and not federally compensated is also just another budget factor, right? I don't, so
Oof, that's
just a
heavy.
lot, right?
That's hard. That's hard to hear. Phew.
And that's a lot, and we're just talking about the short session right now. So that is a lot. It's a lot just thinking about.
Maybe too much. I don't mean to, like, over, but I think, like, it's helpful maybe
No,
for
it's
you
just
guys to
heavy.
understand, like, all of the pressures and kind of pulls and issues that child welfare, in addition to the already incredibly hard work that this is, there's just a lot more kind of compounding
Yeah.
all of it.
In thinking that, and I know I don't think Casey's back yet, but I know one thing we'd like to ask is how do you see the commission being most able to assist in moving forward on some of these important things to help our kids?
It's a really good question. I think, like I wish Rachel was here to kind of comment on some of that. Because I don't fully, I guess like I will be honest, like I don't fully understand like how the commission can work independently or do lobbying or advocacy independently, or how much of that is in connection with the governor's office. Like I don't, or just making reports to the governor's office. So I don't fully know, but I think like becoming aware of these issues, how they have either direct or ripple effects on our kids who have experienced foster care or who are currently experiencing foster care or their families as we strive for reunification or um, permanency. I think just having the awareness is helpful. But again, I'm not really sure what the advocacy avenues look like for you guys.
We just had a whole presentation on that from the Governor's Commission on Senior Services and how they advocate. So
Oh, okay.
I think it's pretty wide open actually to the
Oh,
commission.
good. Okay.
And I am back now. I apologize for having to jump out. I did catch the last 10 minutes of your presentation. Thankfully, we're recording this, so I'll go back and listen to it as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that Adam Hansen, gave us a presentation on the Governor's Senior Citizen or Senior Citizens Board. I forget exactly what it was called, but anyways, he talked about their role in advocacy, and then I did go back and review, the duties and functions of our commission under the Oregon Revised Statute, and it's broad. I mean, it gives us one general language of we shall make recommendations on legislation, and then it says in addition to, and gives us a bullet point list. So I think it's pretty broad, but what we don't want, I think, as a commission, I don't want to speak for everybody, but we don't want to be in the position to where we're going like, whoa, what are we doing? And then just like trying to, put our foot in the way of what you're doing. We want to be as collaborative as possible. We want to be out in front of things so that we're, having the conversations with you and not having to, you know, go
Yeah.
outside of that. So
Yeah.
we just, yeah, understanding how you want us to work with you, understanding how the governor wants us to work with them, and then understanding as a commission independently how we want to work with both of you and work with the legislature as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to keep you updated on the things that child welfare is engaged in, especially, like it will really be more like in late winter, spring that we start talking about legislative concepts for 2027. So I will definitely bring those to you. I think it's just it's really hard to know what priorities are going to look like and how funding issues impact all of that moving forward. So I don't have a crystal ball on any of that. I feel like in 2023, I could tell you like what kind of the visions of different steps would be from child welfare, and right now it feels very um, murky to me about how much are we just trying to maintain and keep what we have already built and not have stuff be eroded necessarily more than thinking about big changes. So, but we'll see.
I have a question, Michelle.
Yeah.
All these impacts of the federal stuff, how they're directly going to impact foster children, former foster youth. Have you seen anything come out nationally that like really calls it out? Like this is how these things are going to impact current and former foster youth?
I
Like
will ask about that. I have not seen anything from the national level. Um,
there.
I don't think our Health and Human Services at the federal level would have created something like that. And so I'm just trying to think if like Casey or some other kind of organization has done something like that. I'll reach out and see if anybody knows. I think what's been a struggle is we get these like kind of like these vague bulletins, right? So very similar to like we won't pay 4E for undocumented youth. And it's like, well, what does undocumented mean to you? Like what like we have so many questions and then we don't have answers, but like nothing's actually happened yet, right? And so some of this is just I feel like I don't know if it's intentional or not, but it like creates spin and chaos and uncertainty that we don't really know what to do with yet, but are worried about. Um,
Yeah, I mean, some states might preemptively just say, we're not gonna, care for these children now
Yeah.
because we don't want to pay it for it out of our pocket, even if
Well,
it.
and yeah, and the 4E would also impact our family first services to families, and that was also kind of like, what do you call, like, again, they used words like undocumented, and it was like, well, what do you mean by, like, you got to have definitions, right? Like, what's your legal definitions of some of this stuff? And then is it just one member? Is it one parent? Like, how do we figure out how to bill that if a family can't receive family first prevention services? And it's just there's more questions than clarity on what some of those proposed policies may look like. So
Yeah, I ask because I wonder if there's a place for the commission to highlight some of these things, and maybe we send it to, our congressional delegation as like a highlight. I mean, they can't change anything now, but just to call out, here's
yeah.
how this is going to impact our children and youth here in Oregon.
I definitely will ask and see if we've had anything. I think maybe it's also would be helpful for you guys to know. I know there have been questions about the shutdown and at what point that would impact child welfare. As I understand it, it would be if the shutdown went through December, we would start having pretty significant budget issues in January. So it's a little bit different timeline than some of our other state agencies, but any other?
Is Michelle, is that because they pay your grants on a quarterly basis?
I don't know exactly. I didn't ask for all the details of that talking point. I just I just know the answer was if the government is still shut down in December, that's when we're going to be worried about, can we pay for staff? Can we pay, like, this is like, I guess, part of federal funding that we get, right? So many of our positions are federally funded, either in percentage or in whole through child welfare. And so all of that just becomes a question. And I think also our payments to foster parents would be an issue starting in January. So I don't say that to create fear. I'm just trying to give context for kind of what deadlines or timeframes are we looking at? Because I know a lot of people were worried about, would something like that happen in November, because that's impacting SNAP in November, but it's just different cadences of, I think, money streams or however that works.
And the kids in care and SNAP, would that start in November?
Can you say that again?
The kids in care and SNAP, SNAP benefits is November though, right?
Yeah, and again, that main issue is for the able-bodied requirement. So it would be a youth who had experienced foster care previously was exempt from having the work requirements to be able to receive SNAP. But there's multiple groups. I know particularly like veterans, children who experience foster care, and then some of our members who were previously, I believe, asylum seekers, I think were removed. I don't have that whole presentation memorized, but they now will have requirements to be working. I know for many folks, the question is like, where are you going to find that work? And all the barriers that many of our folks have to work. Um, like I live in a rural community in Oregon, and I think about that for some of our folks of, I don't know where you're going to have volunteer opportunities to meet that or work opportunities to meet that. That just doesn't necessarily exist. So it'll
Do,
be, yeah.
does that, sorry, my mouth is not connecting with my brain. For kids who are students, like maybe they're at the community college taking full-time course load, will they still have to meet these able-bodied work requirements, or is school a student a different category?
I don't know the answer to that. I can ask our eligibility folks. I would be surprised if students somehow had an exception. I'd not heard that one.
Yeah. Because I just think of how many youth and they're working so hard at school and now they're not going to have food unless they also get a job, but they're in school
Yeah.
full time. That just seems outrageous.
I know many of our community colleges and universities have food pantries on site because of food insecurity issues of their student population. So, I know it's been a problem even when maybe they were SNAP eligible, right? So I think that's kind of a big thing that a lot of people are talking about is just how do we address food insecurity through other channels. Um, I would love ideas or suggestions that you guys have about um, how to get some of that communication out to some of our youth who have formerly experienced uh, foster care. I know child welfare always isn't necessarily the who they want to hear from. So maybe if it's your commission or if you find other ways for communication. I don't know if you guys have like social media that you post on or try and reach out to kids or other ways, but yeah. I know we're trying to do concerted efforts with DHS around community colleges, schools, libraries, kind of similar community partners that we had done a lot of COVID notices to, trying to get them aware of kind of what's going on, where are food resources in their area, trying to kind of do some management that way. If one other thing you may hear, we do have WIC money until mid-November, so that's a little bit different from SNAP. WIC is available until mid-November if you want to ever share that with anybody.
And then what happens after mid-November? Is it all gone?
Mhm.
Oh my God.
But it's like some of the stuff gets difficult with communication, right? Because it's like you want families to know, still apply for WIC, right? Like you could still get it until November and like rely on that if you can. And um, yeah, communication, there's a lot of challenges in how all of this is kind of at different points in time and it can be overwhelming for not only our state employees, but like let alone families that are already dealing with a lot of other stressors.
Yeah.
And that could be fixed if the government comes back before mid-November, right?
Yes, I think what I still am trying to understand is how quickly the faucet is turned on, right? So I can ask that question too. Um, but I think it's contingent on whenever the federal government actually sends us money. I don't know what that's looked like in the past. I guess that would be my question is like once they pass the bill, is it like the next day money is flowing and we get it in our accounts, or is there a delay? I don't know.
Thanks, Michelle. That's
Yeah.
information.
Is there anything else I can help with? I know some of our other partners, I know I've heard from CASAs that they're struggling with getting grants in this time because grants are so sought after. So funding is a struggle, it sounds like, for them as well. I know CACs were at one point talking about funding concerns with, I think, some of the Medicaid changes. I feel like I hear a lot about all these impacts, right, that are kind of coming in all different directions, that will all have kind of compounding on our child safety. Um, that's kind of what I was talking about. It's just really hard to know what this looks like moving forward and how child welfare and like our safety, we're doing a lot of the safety work to try and improve practice and improve safety plans and really get focused on child safety and that being our core work, right? And again, just want to say like, I hope we can all take that in context of everything else that's going on in the stressors and um, continue to do our measures, I mean, obviously we're going to continue to do work on the neutrals measures, trying to make progress on that. That is, I guess, one other update. We were asked to do a presentation, but don't know if we'll be on the agenda quite yet, but to do a presentation in the subcommittee on Ways and Means for Human Services on the neutrals measures and what the agency's plan is to start making progress towards meeting those measures and really what the budget impacts of that will be. I think that the committee understands that some of those may require additional resources or investments in training or things like that, that if we don't get the funding for, we may not see as much progress as kind of we would hope, right? So I think some of it is for their awareness of kind of their role and responsibility to help child welfare meet those measures when there is a budget line associated with it, but also for them to be aware of kind of what child welfare's plan is. So that presentation would, I don't know which day it will be yet, but the legislative days in November is the 17th through the 19th. If you want to listen in, I can send you guys an update on whenever it gets scheduled.
Yeah, once it's scheduled, then I can let everybody know. Sometime between the 17th and 19th, that was what we're looking.
Yes, yeah. Anything else I can help with?
It just sounds like even to maintain current service level, there's going to need to be such an augmented state budget to fill the federal holes that making new progress is going to be really hard.
Yep, that's very true. Not that we won't try, not that we won't dedicate whatever resources we can. Yeah, but I also just don't know like how family stressors in our environment is going to impact or even how those measures look, right? Even if we are making progress and those measures would have been worse, you're not necessarily going to see what we've done to stabilize them or to make even a little bit of progress because it's baselines feel like they're drastically changing every day. Anything else I can help with or questions you guys have? I just appreciate the conversation and here to let you guys know anything that we're working on or work with the legislature. Just as a lot is up in the air, so I don't feel like I have very much definitive to tell you.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming, Michelle. It's always good to have an idea of what the agency is going to be doing in the upcoming legislative session. I'm happy to check in with you, offline if things come up in the interims between the meetings. But we appreciate you having you at the meetings and giving the legislative updates. As always, if there's anything that you feel like you particularly want feedback on, or you think that there's a role for us to provide advocacy on, just let us know.
Yeah, so appreciate it. And thanks for the invite. I appreciate and enjoy coming to these. So thank you. Have a good day, you guys.
You too. All right, Ellen, I think 2 minutes early, so we're doing really well with time. Do you want to go ahead and take a break and we'll take a 7-minute break till 10:35?
Sounds perfect.
Okay, we'll be back at 10:35, y'all.
Wait, back at what time, Ellen?
10:35,
Oh, so just a 5-minute break. Okay.
just a quick one. And then if we can chat
Afterwards.
afterwards, would be great. Yeah.
Yep.
Did 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 this meeting cut out?
We're on break until 10:35.
Gotcha. I left for a minute or two. Thank you. All right. Bye. Sorry, guys. I actually have to go for something. See you guys next month.
Okay, talk to you. Oh, Dan? Dan,
Yeah.
do you, are you able to stay for the talking about priorities discussion?
You know what? Sure. I'll just tell them that to reschedule. So.
Okay.
When I'm on WebEx, they can't see. So yeah, I just in my office, I just throw on a suit jacket and do court,
Yeah.
and then I'm back into my comfy. So
Yeah, I've got a couple of like suit jackets hanging over there for, emergency
yeah,
grabbing. It's funny. The Zoom life. I
yeah.
lost my glasses.
Okay, do we have everybody back? See a lot of cameras off, but I'm gonna assume most people are back. So this next session is all about us for the most part. As we talked about before, we wanted to really give an opportunity for commissioners' voices to be heard. When we come onto the commission, usually we're in the midst of a legislative session or things are going on, and the commission's constantly working. And so for the people that came on recently, it probably felt we were really heavily educationally focused. It was a big issue of mine that thankfully we got to work on a lot. But we want to hear what everybody's pet issues are really. What brought you to this commission? What in your life shaped you to, sit where you are now? I think by both understanding that, it gives us a better understanding of what your priorities are so that we can incorporate it into the commission. But also just understanding who you are and why you're here. I think it creates more connection amongst the committee or the commission so that, we respect and cherish each other, a lot more. And so I think we put on there, we're going to go around just like we do in the intros and share what is your background and what leads you to be passionate about this work, and what are your priorities or desires to make change while you're on this commission. Otherwise, what do you want us to work on for overall system improvement? As you all know, ORS 418.044 outlines the functions and duties of the commission. And I was just mentioning it to Michelle, but in the first paragraph there, it says, the commission is to make recommendations for legislation regarding the foster care system in this state. So it's pretty broad. And then it says, in addition, the commission shall study and report to the governor and the directors with respect to the following, and lists a whole list of things. So there's things that the legislature wanted us to focus on, but they also left it open regarding the foster care system in this state. So I think, we certainly have the wiggle room to work on things like education, like children returning into care as adults themselves, things that, we see as problematic in the foster care system that's not reflected by the legislature and what they put out for us to monitor. A lot of the things that they put us out, are monitoring and measuring outcomes, including but not limited to, you might recognize these as a lot of the federal standards, the number of children placed with family members, relatives of kin, decreasing the number of placements in or removals from substitute care, decreasing the length of time children spend in substitute care, decreasing incidents of abuse, neglect, and maltreatment, and so on and so on. So those are the things like, I think DHS really wants us to kind of focus on. But again, share what your priorities are. Don't feel like you're boxed in by those, because that first paragraph, I think, gives us wiggle room to work on other things. So with that said, who would like to go first? I know Alicia had a time constraint. I don't know if we've already lost her. It looks like we lost her. Okay.
I just texted her and because she told me she was rejoining, that's what she was saying, that she would rejoin by phone as soon as her, what I think she was called into something on behalf of a family. So, so as soon as she could rejoin, hopefully that'll be soon.
Casey, I'll go ahead and start if you guys don't mind.
Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah. Okay, so what brought me here, what brought me, what's my background? So my background is early on as a youth. I was 9 years old, and my parents went to the federal penitentiary. And so at that time, being 9 years old, me and my 8-year-old brother ended up going and was placed by the police with my sister, and she was 18. Shortly after that, a lot of our behavior started coming out. We stopped going to school. We started using drugs, and we ran away from my sisters. So from 9 to probably about 12, 13, we were somehow surviving, being exposed to that type of life. We learn a lot of bad behaviors. So when I was 12 or so, I went in, I picked up some charges and was placed in juvenile hall there in Lane County. Me and my brother. My brother was one of our youngest ever held in the Skipworth facility there in Eugene. From that point, we were there for 3 or 4 months in the juvenile hall until we were placed with uh, a or a foster a resource house foster family. We stayed there for a couple months and then decided it wasn't for us and we left. I don't know where my brother went after that. I know shortly after that I went back to juvenile hall and then I was placed in a program called Stepping Stones program, which is off of 13th and Mill in Eugene. In that program, I was able to get a lot of counseling. It was like pretty much you live in there. There were 16 youth there, and we went through a lot of learning pro-social skills, processing our emotions and our trauma and stuff. A lot of counseling, and so was in there for about eight or so months, and then went back into another foster care home. That didn't last very long as well. My dad got out first, and I think I was 14, 15. I think I was 15 by that time. And then I was placed with my dad. And then shortly after that, our behaviors were so extensive. I stopped going to school, started running around with the wrong crowd, using drugs and the life of crime and stuff. And from there till I was 28 years old, I continued that lifestyle without any supervision of parents. So pretty much from when I was 9 years old to 28 years old, I didn't know what having a family structure or a positive role model was like. I didn't know what a healthy decision making was. I didn't know what a normal family structure looked like. I didn't have any of that guidance or stability throughout that time period. I internalized a lot of that exposure in toward myself. And so I suffered with a lot of low self-esteem, insecurities. When I was 28, I got into recovery. I went in and out of recovery, did some treatments and stuff. When I was 33, I ended up meeting my wife that I'm with and had a child. From that point, I ended up getting like 5 years clean. I went through a drug court program here in Marion County, successfully completed that. Gained a lot of the life skills that I needed. I got my education, my GED, got a little bit of work experience, had a lot of wraparound services and supports that helped me within the community that kind of gave me that guidance that I never had growing up. And from that, I ended up growing. I had 3 kids. I have 3 kids right now. Eventually, I went back out into my addiction after getting injured and got addicted to Oxycontin and codeine and stuff, fentanyl, patches from the doctor. Ended up neglecting my recovery, and I brought my family back into that lifestyle again. We were out on the streets for 6 or so years until it was 2/28 of 2016 is my clean date and my recovery date. It's the date that I got rescued by the police and child welfare, and was able to put my priorities straight and start to heal from a lot of my past and my addiction. And from that point on, I had an idea in my mind. I wanted to be a parent mentor. I wanted to be somebody that could reach out to another male in their recovery path through child welfare and help them navigate, help them see differently, help them heal, and uh, get their kids back from child welfare and just to be a positive, healthy father in their child's life, to be of whatever support I can be. Um, and I've been doing that. I went to Bridgeway, started working at Bridgeway for a while as an addiction treatment specialist, inpatient house for men. Then after that, I went to Bridges to Change for a couple years as a mental health mentor. I got my qualified mental health associates, my QMHA through the state of Oregon, and then my CRM, Certified Recovery Mentor. Um, and I worked up there with probation and parole with mental health for a couple years. It's also a passion of mine. A lot of exposure to mental health throughout my family and myself. So after that, I ended up working with Morrison and Child Family Services, where I still reside, coming up on 4 years there. And through this process, I've been exposed to advocacy work. And early on with Morrison Child Family Services, supporting families and parents and meeting them where they're at and getting them the resources that they need and seeing the system and all the barriers and struggles that individuals go through. And through my lived experience, I fell into a lot of boards and committees and seats and advisory and subcommittees that I was able to provide my perspective and my lived experience to challenge these processes, to speak up and speak out for individuals, especially fathers that don't get the same kind of treatment as the females do in the child welfare system, and bring my perspective and ideas and solution focused mindset and just really try to collaborate with individuals and to create a better system. And I found my passion in my work, and I enjoy and I love that work. So what I want to see changed is while I'm here on the board is just really challenging and questioning the what we're doing currently and bringing perspective and ideas to what we could potentially be doing better, and pushing forward with that advocacy work, whatever that looks like, and however I can show up and represent those individuals, because at the end of the day, it's creating a better system and for our children and better outcomes. And for me, it helps me heal internally from when I was 9 years old and everything was stripped from me. And I still feel that trauma and those feelings, and I don't want that for other individuals. And so that's why I choose to sit here and be vulnerable and transparent and be open and have a lot of humility and just try to create a better system. So that's what I have.
Jesse, does anybody have any questions for Jesse?
Yeah, I
Or
love
comments?
questions.
Yeah. I think that's a really powerful story. One of the common themes with this commission is lived experience, and whether it was as a child or as an adult suffering from substance abuse. When we talk about hope, seeing people overcome things to me is hope, right? Like seeing you do it, seeing the parents I work with doing it, that gives me hope. One of the cool things about working with kids in care is so often we have happy endings. Even in the worst case scenarios, the terminations, there's a bright line that the child is in a protected family at that point. And so, seeing the recovery though, seeing the process work out with people and seeing success stories like that gives me hope, Jesse.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Would anybody like to go next? I don't want to call on people because this is a bigger thing. So like when you're ready, you can jump in. But Dean's got his hand raised.
Yeah, I decided why not. So, as uh, So where to begin? Well, I guess I'll just say that, my family has unique experience due to our ancestors being undocumented farm workers who became citizens, and we have intergenerational foster care experience. My mother went into foster care because my grandmother was unable to take care of her because she was just sleeping around and getting drunk and stuff like that, and wasn't able to provide. So my mother grew up in a very different environment uh, from her, from our, you know, from what most Latinos grow from. And then she moved and worked across the country. Met my dad in Louisiana. I was born with autism and stuff like that. We found that out, and thanks to uh, California special education and affirmative action programs, I was able to go to a preschool and be able to get some education at an early age socially, and stuff like that. And so anyway, so we, as I said, we moved around. We moved around a few times. I was always a new kid, and then we moved here to Portland, where my mother had a violent partner because she'd been raising a kid for 11 years alone. I can sort of understand that in hindsight. And so I went to foster care on the east side of Portland, uh, and it's been a very interesting experience. I'd say that generally I've been lucky to not have been like in an abusive foster home and stuff like that, but I definitely see a lot of issues. Uh, I see a lack of socioeconomic mobility unless people, of course, start to use their lived experience to go into government, which is good, but I would really like to be able to see people be able to uh, pursue whatever dreams they have and be able to rely on economic stability no matter what career they pursue. And I think that they often are dealing with lots of trauma, and there's also lots of social conflicts, I think, in some foster homes that get under reported. And I think that means that they require a good team, sort of like IEPs and special education. So I think that providing them with more opportunity to do what they love and to also figure out what they want to do is very key. I also know that there's a disproportionate amount of abuse in foster homes, and that's something that bothers me personally. Uh, your home should be where you are safe. Nobody should be exploiting anyone or harming anyone. So I really want us to address that. And I think that those are the two core things. People deserve safety and people deserve opportunity and fairness. So, as you know, also, of course, the hope for a long while, several people in foster care were held in hotels and stuff like that, and a disproportionate amount of foster youth, according to my knowledge, also tend to have neurodivergence. So that can actually have a long-term systemic effect on their ability to succeed. So we need to be making sure that they are being granted the holistic, full spectrum supports that they need in order to be able to thrive, not and live fulfilling lives, not just have good jobs. Like family is super important, as well as developing healthy and social relationships. I myself lacked really much of that opportunity until I was in high school myself, so I had to rapidly learn. So I'm really passionate about making sure that they have the ability to really, no matter where they are, that they have the opportunity to succeed, that they have their services like healthcare and stuff like that, mental health care especially, because a lot of them end up having PTSD as well. So I'm passionate about that, and making sure that we are ensuring that foster homes are fully funded and safe, and that they are able to be, instead of a last resort, they're able to be opportunities for kids who for one reason or another have to go into foster care. So I think we should be looking at, like, how do we actually think about this, and how do we make it more than just acceptable and make it something that breeds excellence and breeds real mobility and opportunity for people and the real opportunity to have fulfilling lives. In the current moment, there is some of that, but we can do so much more. So that's a little bit about my story. I've obviously also worked on the Portland, as I said before, I worked on Portland Children's Levy, Oregon Commission on Autism, and I'm really passionate about making sure that everything is affordable and that people are able to basically have all the support that they need. It's quite basic, but uh, I it comes from a place of personal experience and heart and seeing other people fail and succeed. And I think it's the job of us to make sure that they are able to succeed because everyone deserves a fulfilling life that is defined by what their calling is. So I also know that they are, high in suicide rates after and during. So I really wanted to address that as someone who's had emotional health crises before. As I said, they deserve they deserve good relationships, they deserve good jobs, they deserve a fulfilling life where there's no empty hole in their heart because that's basic human sense, that's basic human dignity. And so I'd like to see us like double down on helping with that sort of thing, as well as making sure that the placements and stuff like that, and that we're building the infrastructure and resources so that they are able to get all that support. So, yeah, that's essentially all. I wish it was a little bit more complex, but it's just comes from a place of genuine care, I guess. Uh, so wish I was a little bit more philosophical. Yeah, thank you. Any questions for me? No? Okay. Oh, nope. All right. Thought I saw a someone unmute. Thank you.
Appreciate you, Deanne. Anybody want to go next?
I can go. I was an advocate for kids and families for 19 years in the courts of Southern Oregon, Coos County, Josephine County, Jackson, and Curry, and sometimes in Douglas. So I've seen a lot of different ways that the court has done things. I also filed a lot of appellate cases on dependency cases in the Court of Appeals and made some law there. Now I'm on the Court of Appeals and I'm trying to influence the way that the importance that we have of dependency cases and the way that we treat those things. I guess I have sometimes wondered if this is the right commission for me, because while I feel like foster homes should be much safer than they are, and I also feel like we should do everything that we can to mitigate the negative impacts of having foster kids in care, I feel like government shouldn't do anything to make it worse. My real goal with the system is for us actually to shore up families and make them better so that they can take care of their own kids. And I sometimes wonder if that is not a mission that we're allowed to spend much of our time on. But I get the sense that a lot of the other people that have been on this commission for a long time feel like that's the main goal too, is to make sure that we're actually expending our resources to improve the families and try and put them back together and spend our efforts on that. That's really important to me because in my work, especially as a trial judge, I think that those are the stories where we make our best impact and really can have a good influence on society as a whole if we can get tailored services to families that actually address the issues that brought the kids into care and have them be able to take care of their own kids better rather than come up with a different plan and a new family. I know that sometimes that's necessary, but I think that that should be a last resort. So those are the things I really want to work on. I think that the work that we've been doing with educational outcomes is hugely important too. I've seen a lot of foster kids who were really resilient, like Jesse and Dian. Hearing their stories inspires me. But that's not every kid that goes in foster care. There are a lot of them that haven't been able to be resilient or have just been devastated by the loss of their family and have kind of spiraled, and we haven't been able to help those kids or get them to a place where they have what they need. And I think that helping to get their family of origin back to a place where they can meet those needs is really important. So that's where I'm coming from.
This is Jesse, Judge. I just want to really say that I value your perspective here, and I think it's a must that we have a judge here to provide that perspective and that experience. And yeah, it's just your perception, and I value it greatly. And I just want you to acknowledge that that's how I feel.
And I would say it took like 5 years to get a judge appointed to this commission, and I worked really hard to get. So we are grateful, Judge Dakota, to have you. And I wrote in the chat as you were talking, if you look at our legislation, it's pretty much everything in the kitchen sink. I think almost anything connected to child welfare, either prevention, in care, aftercare, we could make the case fits in our statute. So I would just agree with you about the family preservation piece.
And
And so let's do it.
I totally agree too. And since now part of my role is moving over into working with Family First and with Kinship Navigator and having a strong Kinship Navigator program in the state of Oregon that's evidence-based. It's real exciting work. I love having worked with the 4E plan and just the whole family preservation and Family First team. And so maybe one thing we could think about, and you know, if you all are interested, is having some maybe Mary from Family First come and talk about the new plan and some of the ways we can strengthen, because there's new evidence-based programs in that 4E plan. We're doing a lot of work trying to really have a broad tribal outreach, which is super important, and make sure they're involved in the choosing of these plans. So we've got I think we have eight programs that are going to be Family First, Family Preservation new going into this next cycle, where there had only been 4. So this is all really exciting work, and I've just had a wonderful time working with them. So if you all are interested in that, we can certainly invite them to come.
Yes, I thought I have a weird little inkling that at some point we had talked about this briefly, and we're gonna invite them. So I'd have a vote to yes, let's get them in.
I vote yes as well, for sure.
Aye.
I can jump in. I think at this point I'm the oldest, not the longest standing commission member. I joined the commission. My first meeting was in person down in Salem, and it was their annual retreat. And like a few weeks after that, COVID shut down, the whole world. And so I had one in-person meeting and then was virtual all the rest of the time on the commission. So that's when I came on board. My background, I grew up in foster care here in Oregon. I spent 11 years in the system from the age of 7 until I aged out and left on my own when I was 18. I primarily did not have a good experience in the system. I experienced a lot of abuse, a lot of psychological abuse in foster care. And so one of my deepest passions has been child safety in the foster care system, and I have advocated for this for my whole adult life. That it's not just about, well, was there a founded abuse, like physical abuse? You're not being beaten or starved or raped, but wow, every day they tell you you're a piece of crap and you're going to turn out just like your parents and there's nothing good about you. That does a lot to young people in foster care who already feel, pretty terrible and unwanted. So that's been my drum, I don't know, that I beat on every time. And I know that that's one of the requirements as part of the settlement, that we reduce our rate of founded abuse in foster care. And I continue to push back and say, you're only talking about the stuff that's reported and that rises to the level of abuse. And I would argue that what we consider in the hotline to rise to the level of abuse in a foster home around psychological abuse is not good enough. Um, so that's the hill I will die on forever because I do think foster parents should have a higher level of standard of care. Every child who comes into care is traumatized. The experience of being removed itself is traumatizing, regardless of what you were going through before or after, regardless of how wonderful the foster parents might be that you get to live with. Um, so that's my dream is that we have foster parents who are all trauma informed, caring, safe, higher level of care. Every child is treated um, like we would with a trauma informed foster home. Uh, and we don't have this kind of lower expectation. Anyway, that's my biggest. Um, I continue to beat the drum on, and I don't know where that's all going to go. But so I aged out at 18. I went to college. I had very good grades. My response to abuse was fawn and please other people, which I'm sure others have some of that experience as well. And so big people pleaser and teacher pleaser, and so got really good grades, which fortunately for me opened a door to college and other things in life that I wouldn't have had access to, and some scholarships to go to school. So I went to school and immediately started volunteering with young people in foster care and group homes. I did that during my undergrad down in Eugene. And then my first job out of undergrad was working at a statewide child advocacy organization. And then while I was there, I was doing child welfare advocacy and founded the Oregon Foster Youth Connection because I felt so strongly that somebody needed to be listening to foster youth and their actual experiences going on. So that was a group of youth from like 14 to 25 who could advocate for state policy change to improve the system based on their lived experiences and care, and teaching people how to value that and how to compensate youth for that and not take advantage of them and um, not try and control their narrative, all those things. Some of that happens when you're youth and people kind of cherry pick you out and put you on panels and don't exactly treat you well. So I did that for a long time, and my whole career now has been in some child serving, family serving capacity. So I continue to be extremely passionate about that. And the other thing that I wrote was so we've got abuse in foster care, the support for youth after leaving foster care, huge issue of mine. We often just ignore it. Like, you're out of the system. That's not okay. Those youth need so much support and services. And that's why I was so upset when Michelle was talking about these extra barriers that foster youth are going to have now as they leave the system to getting food assistance. It just really ticks me off because I don't need one more freaking barrier. And then my third thing was the kind of whole family prevention. How are we putting all that money, to what, $30,000 a year to cover a kid in foster care? What if we give a family $30,000 a year to keep their kids at home and get treatment and get health care and get all the things they need? I would love to see that be the direction we're going. I think that's all. Yeah.
Thank you, Pamela. I will say that you have so much institutional knowledge on here, and you've been such a leader for this commission since I've been on. We just love having you and be a part of this. I think, the work that you did before this commission as well, and the work you've done on the commission, we can certainly say that every single kid in care is somewhat safer because of the work that you've done.
Oh, thanks.
Anybody want to go next? I can jump in if you guys want. Or Matt, you came off mute. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'll get my camera back on.
All right, we'll let you go.
Why I got into this. So, it started off with my kids' friends. We ended up taking a couple of those in inadvertently, just because they ended up spending the night at their house, and then their parents got arrested, and then we ended up keeping their kids for a long period of time, not knowing that we're going to have them for a while. And then eventually DHS came and took them, put them in resource family, and we weren't able to keep them because we weren't resource parents at the time. So my wife started looking into the program, and then my own experience as a resource parent doing that, seeing where some of the children came from, some of their foster or resource families that housed them, and how they didn't mesh well with them. The first three, four kiddos we took in came from other resource families that they couldn't get along with. And a lot of it was just letting those, like finding a way for those kids to thrive in your own environment and just kind of adjusting a little bit uh, to where they could be successful. And some of it came from just being consistent with them and letting them know what the standard was and letting them meet it and give them that opportunity to meet that standard. And then there's always an adjustment period and just allowing those kids. So our first kid we had was like it was a year and a half, almost 2 years. And then our second one was we had him for several years. And then anyway, we had long term. These are all kids that were kicked out of another home, for lack of a better term. So they could be successful. It just took patience and consistency to allow those kids to be awesome. And then my own career, so I'm in law enforcement. I've been a detective for I don't know 9 years now. Um, so I've done narcotics drug task force, which is what I'm doing now. I'm work narcotics, and I did major crimes with doing special investigations with people of various levels of assault, and watching where those kids went, and like to piggyback off of what Pamela said, the standard of a resource family. I would love to see that standard raised. Um, yeah, I think it's disheartening and heartbreaking to see where some of these kiddos go to, and I'd really like to see that standard raised because I know some of these houses they go to. I know them from a different part of my job, and and I don't have a say so in where they go, so it's disheartening to see where they end up, and the motivations behind those people and why they're resource parents. It isn't always the best reasons, so that's the real reasons why I got into this, and I want to see how I can help make change and or just aid the system along and just becoming better. So that's why I jumped on this committee.
Can you remind me, are you from where do you live at?
Eastern Oregon,
Eastern.
outside of Hermiston.
Oh yeah, I'm from Hermiston.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yep. But no, I appreciate you being a part of this commission too. Having a officer on this, I think provides a really unique perspective. And then you being from Eastern Oregon, I think you're probably the only one we have from out there. So it's just, we've talked about the difficulties in recruiting a judge and recruiting rural Oregon. And so you just bring a really unique perspective that I think, we'll all really appreciate in your time on this commission. Um, and being a resource parent, incredibly difficult job. I don't know how people do it because the requirements that they put on you, including having the caseworkers come and visit, the attorneys come and visit, the services you have to do. It's almost like a full-time job to be a resource parent in addition to whatever you're doing to support your family yourself. And so it takes a lot. I'd do it myself if I had the time to do it, but I don't. And so I just have a lot of admiration for resource parents that can put forth the time and the dedication. Malik, that leaves you and I. You want me to go or are you ready? I think you're muted. Or you're not muted, I just can't hear you.
Huh. Can you hear me now? Can you?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah. Um, I think a lot of folks kind of already shared some things that I guess, yeah, we start with my background and kind of my passion to be here. So, um, you know, I can honestly share that I don't have lived experience with the system directly. While I've had family and friends who have our system impacted, I don't own that narrative. And but something that, got me into social services and specifically youth facing work is just I've always felt as someone who has, other experience, youth mental health crises and um being in locked facilities as a younger individual and like having my power stripped away from me as a young person has really inspired me to do the work to bring that back. And really through the lens that I really move through my work now, and all the work that I do is all about youth liberation and empowerment. And as, someone in leadership at, the work that I've been doing for some time now is really about how the driving force of programming and the services delivering process is all based off the feedback and guidance of youth as it should be. And so really being on, this commission, something that why I want to be here and why I want to do this work is because I feel, I allow myself to sometimes sit quiet and listen to others and get feedback from the experiences of the youth that I've served and hearing the experiences of the youth and families that you've worked with. And I feel, I bring also a unique perspective of really seeing, and kind of to Pamela's piece about post being in care and really working with that transitional age older youth that have exited out of the system and seeing that the system has not properly supported them in that transition. The pipeline to juvenile or DHS to houselessness make up quite, was 50%, if not more, of the population that I currently serve right now. And so really wanting to bring that like insight to this space and talk really about that post system and what that really looks like, and that there aren't really guardrails in place to support them. I think in terms of like, again, that priorities is really about that post transition of how do we support and provide transitional based housing? How do we really create and build out ILP programs that actually meet the need of what becoming an adult really looks like and what resources and services are accessible to youth once they've transitioned out of care. I think another thing that I would really love to see, and I think as a commissioner that we can do, is really bringing more youth voice into this space. I know it's something that we've talked about, and recognizing that so many of the folks on this team do have lived experience. I think really wanting to really take a look at, our bylaws and what the requirement of who needs to be on the board and really make that a driving thing, that we should have youth that are wanting to take on leadership opportunities and want to be advocates for themselves and their peers to be in this space. And whether that's having a dedicated board member or bringing about other committees and youth advisory boards that are run at higher levels of youth leaders that can come to this space to really share, I think would be really important and really powerful. Into that piece of, again, not using them as token and not bringing them to, mark a checkbox, but really to be genuinely here to listen and understand their experience, is really important to me. And then, yeah, again, kind of echoing again everything everybody else says, increasing the standards for the training and the onboarding and the requirements to be. While I know we are in a deficit of resource parents, I think what it takes to be a resource parent does require a higher level of understanding of not only the trauma that our young people are experiencing, but also the understanding of that these young people are people too, and they deserve a right to be a voice in determining how they move through the world. So yeah, it's been a pleasure to be alongside so many passionate and inspiring people that do this work in so many different ways and different fields. And so it's really cool to hear so many great different perspectives and understandings of how the work should be done, can be done, is really great. Yeah, that's kind of all I've got. I don't want to take up too much of this space, but yeah.
Thanks, Malik. And I saw that Pamela put a comment in there that the Oregon Foster Youth Connection just got their 501c3 status, so she's hoping that they can send a liaison to the commission. Yeah, there seems to be, a lot of everybody's priorities are grounded in like the youth and making sure they have better outcomes post-transition during resource care. So it's really powerful stuff. Okay, for me, let's see. So I did not grow up in foster care, but when I was born, my mother was addicted. Let me turn off. When I was born, my mother was, or actually previously to being born, I spent time in jail in my mother's womb. She was a coke addict, and my father was a hardcore alcoholic. And I entered care pretty early on in life. I think I was probably 2 or 3, with my sister, who was a newborn. And I spent one stint in foster care at that point, and I don't remember it at all. And then I got out, and later on, I was by babysitters. Actually, I was again sexually abused and beaten, and my sister and I were again put into care. And that time I remembered it. I was 4 or 5, and I think I was almost 6 by the time I was returned to my parents, who later told me that they were, fine giving me up for adoption. And it was kind of a last second shift that I went home. Growing up, I kind of felt branded as a foster care kid. My initials were CSD. And so, I kind of felt like I just kind of felt like me and the system were the same thing. And my parents were divorced. And so my father, well, being an alcoholic, was a railroader, worked on 24-hour calls. So he was largely absent. He wasn't abusive. He just wasn't there. And my stepmom was very abusive. And so I chose to go live with my mom, who unfortunately was not doing much better. She, transitioned from coke to heroin. Um, the thing that really struck me as a child was my mom tried to get clean. She'd check herself into halfway houses. She would, do the things that she was trying to do. But ultimately, she had no college education. Her job was a waitress, and she had 3 kids. And so I continuously saw her go back to abusive relationships because she had no other way to support her family. And she was murdered when I was 11 years old by her boyfriend. And so I think at that point, as a young youth, it really kind of drove me to want to do education because it's what I saw in the media at the time to really have social mobility to get out of it. But growing up in rural Eastern Oregon, I didn't think education was a possibility for me. This was pre-internet, so knowing about student loans, things like that, wasn't at the tips of I didn't know about them. So I entered the military because I thought it was the only way I could pay for college. And after I got out of the military, I went to college at Eastern Oregon University and fell in love studying sociology and kind of the, study of humans. And what really kind of changed my career there was I got involved with student advocacy. And in part of that, I was like, we want everybody to go to college. And so I started doing the Oregon Students Association, and our main thing was voter activation. I wanted people voting. I wanted leaders who supported education. I registered 117,000 Oregonians in 2008 and liked it so much that I moved to Arizona when I was offered to run the whole state there. I was at Portland State here in Oregon. We went to Arizona, and between 2012 and 2016, we registered another 157,000 voters. And the bigger impact is we put 800,000 Latinos that were already registered to vote. You have to do a secondary registration, which they call PEV, Permanent Early Voting List. So you have to register to get a ballot mailed to you rather than show up to the polls. So we spent largely 2015 and 2016 putting Latinos on the early vote list. What we ultimately saw was voting didn't make an impact with all the. So you can see I chase issues, right? I saw that voting wasn't making an impact because dark money was influencing it. So I spent a year working on campaign finance to try to get money out of politics, and then that didn't work. So I jumped back into kind of identity organizing, and I was always an organizer at heart. And one of the things as a child, my mom had a boyfriend who was a lawyer, and he was the only stable person I knew in my life. And so it was always my dream to go to law school. And, after the 2016 election, my wife said, well, you could be 35 or you could be 35 with a law degree. And I was like, boy, that's a good way to say it. So went to law school later on in life. And ultimately, I ended up on this commission because when I graduated law school, I fell into dependency. I didn't even know it was a type of law where I represent kids. And I met Pamela, who I was connected to Pamela, who got me on this commission. So going back to the original part of my story, one of the big things, I still believe education is the key to social mobility. When we look at the kids that are coming into care, how many of them are coming out of poverty? I think I've represented out of 400 cases in my career, one person who did not qualify for a public defender. So that, it's just so disproportionately affects low-income people, that was a big priority for me. And I appreciate the commission kind of taking that on and working on that. But to kind of in my story, I'd be remiss to say, as serving as the juvenile advocate in terms of juvenile attorneys on this, I haven't talked about this issue much because I don't want to be self-serving, but in order for attorneys to better represent children, to better represent parents, they're, I don't know if people follow the news, but our caseloads have jumped and jumped and jumped. Essentially, we use standards that are not the Oregon standards. We use federal standards, and we have PCRP programs in, I believe, 5 counties, and in that, your caseload's limited at 69. So you get 69 cases a year. Where I'm at now, I get about 120, even though it says I'm only supposed to get 80. So I'm, significantly over my caseload. I can't, I can't properly represent everybody the way I would want to. I know that there's people doing hourly work that are taking 6 or 7 cases and putting in enough time on those cases to be able to get a paycheck. And so, you know, I'd like to see more investment on that side. We pay the people that prosecute parents, the attorney generals, nearly double what we pay the people that represent parents and kids. And so self-serving, those are some of my issues on that. But other things, I get bogged down in court, and there's small issues that I'd like to fix. For instance, I see a lot of kids go into resource care, shelter, substitute care that shouldn't be there. I don't know if everybody's aware, but we're not allowed to appeal decisions that are pre-jurisdiction. So before they get jurisdiction, it's not appealable. And what we see a lot of times is we come to court and the agency's asking for an in-home plan with parents at the shelter hearing, but the judge decides on their own accord with nobody asking for it that the kid's going to go into foster care. And, I think the statute's pretty clear that only the parent, the ward, or the youth shall put on evidence of why an in-home plan is appropriate, which is giving to me a presumption that the agency's asking for shelter care. So I don't believe that we should be placing kids in foster care when no party is asking for it. The other thing that Judge Jaco kind of brought on that really bugs me on this is, and it's counter to what the agency wants to do is close cases quickly. When we see youth come into care as babies, we tend to request early permanency hearing 6 months into the case and to try to change the plan to adoption. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know where they come up with that data that it's more important for them to have permanency. But for me, growing up, it was still better for me to go home, even though I had a rocky childhood. I'm still a lawyer. I still had a successful life. And so I think we move too quickly to permanency with kids. And then the last issue I'm going to bring up, I don't know if Ellen wants me bringing this up, is just something, again, that bugs me is when we're looking at this commission, it's super important in evaluating the agency. A lot of what we did here, or a lot of what people have talked about is, holding their feet to the fire, standards, things like that with the agency. But we've been told that that the governor's office wants to remove our ability to recommend commissioners, and they want to put that in the hands of ODHS. So ODHS will be selecting the people who are evaluating them, and I see that as entirely problematic. That just came up to our attention a couple of weeks ago. So we're going to be bringing that up with the governor's office. But the fact that, they're willing to do that to kind of build a commission who's not going to oppose the bills that they're doing, I think it's dirty. I feel really uncomfortable with it as the chair of the commission. And so, while it's not an issue that I was thinking about 2 weeks ago, it's an issue, that is close to my heart now. And listening to Adam and how their commission selects people, it's very similar to the way that we currently do it. I think that, part of the problem is we were putting forward people that had a wide range of political views, a wide range of lived experience. And so, I feel uncomfortable with that. I think the commission should be, aware of what the governor's office is wanting to do with that so that we can have a discussion on it at a later date. So mine was a little longer. I just kind of wanted to explain, all of my issues and how they're really kind of pet peeves within certain things, but changing the law to clarify it, and then perhaps working with the legislature to expand what this commission's actually doing so that they're aware that these federal things, when we achieve permanency, is not how we should be evaluating foster care. It's, what are the outcomes for our children? That's what I'm hearing from this commission is, what are the outcomes for our children? How are they getting through the system? If we can get them to the parents, great. If we can't, let's make sure they're successful in life. So that's what I had.
I'm almost speechless hearing about this, that we would not have control of our own membership. So I'd love to have that kind of conversation. And also, I would resign immediately if that decision were made. I will not be a part of that rubber stamping.
Yeah, and I did bring that up. I did bring that up as well, Pamela. I was like, what's the point of this commission if we're just a rubber stamp? So I think this needs to be a longer conversation. I think Rachel needs to be brought into this conversation because she canceled the meeting with us that we were going to have about this. So it's an issue. We could certainly put it on the agenda for December.
Yeah,
Yes,
and I was
please.
just gonna say, and we don't really, I don't really have all the information, so I think maybe the first step is Casey reaching out to, or Casey and Malik reaching out to Rachel and also talking to Lacey. I'm not, just, and I'm caught in that odd position as Adam was kind of defining, even for himself, but we have been following the same rules that all the other commissions. So as you all know, when I usually do the first screening, then I pass it on to when it was you and Jessica, Pamela, and now to Casey and Malik, and then you guys make the decision. And we put those names forward, and I had put some names forward in and I'm just going to give you this history, but I don't want to say too much. But so I put some names forward back in June of the people that, of I think 2 or 3 people.
Not you, Ellen. We made a very
we.
intentional decision.
But I mean, you put them forward, but I put them on the sheet. I typed their names in and sent it in the same way that other people in my role do. And then I was asked a few times over the summer to clarify what the process was of bringing people on. And so I've written it up and I have shared that. And it's just the same as what other board administrative partners or people who have that role in the organization have done. And the June, I never heard back. So July came and went, and then August came. And so I sent several fairly gracious emails out to the executive appointments and I know there have been some changes and things. And then what we got back was, I didn't get back anything actually. And then I was notified by my manager and child welfare that I wasn't to communicate with the governor's office anymore, that I had to stop sending emails and asking, and that it would be that there was evidently some conversations happening between executive leadership and the governor's office around who would go on the commission. So that's what I know. And then I've never had a conversation with anyone except my manager, just to be clear. So I'm in that kind of awkward position. I'm an employee of child welfare. I'll do what needs to be done. But I'm also, I feel like I have a responsibility to do the work of the commission and to support the commission. And this is part of my role. So I have been asking, just so you all know, I ask pretty much weekly, what do we know about my role? And when do I, so because what I've been told is I'm supposed to now, the names that you all want to put forward, you will work with maybe Lacey or somebody else to just, on putting those names forward. So it's unclear. I don't really know. But I think that maybe what it really requires, and I'll take myself out of this when you have these conversations, because I really can't be a part of those conversations. But I think there needs to be clarity established on what the process is going to be and what other commissions are, because honestly, it kind of hamstrings me in my role here. I want to do the best job I can for you. But I didn't even get invited to the last board administrative partner trainings. I wasn't even on the list. I could see that all of a sudden there was a chat, and I'm like, wow, I didn't even get an invitation. So I've been kind of cut out of things that are part of my role. And I'm not sure, and it's, that's just, giving grace. I would say maybe that's just an oversight, maybe that happened, but it would be nice to get some clarity. And because, again, I'm supposed to only work with my manager, so I'm asking. And she hasn't heard back, and I either. So I don't know what will come, how that will, and maybe they need to do some restructuring of where my position goes. Or maybe, I don't know. I mean,
This is exactly why we didn't want this position in child welfare. This is exactly why we pushed back and pushed back. And it's so frustrating to see it come so quickly. I'm sorry that you're stuck in the middle, Ellen. I'm like enraged right now for you.
and we have a pretty thick skin, so none of this I take it personally. I mean, it's just like, I want to do the best job I can for this commission. And
Oh, I know. It's not about you. This is how the system works. This is what they do. This is what
But
they do.
I think, it does deserve, you'll probably, with myself out of it, you and my manager have suggested that Casey and Malik, or that commissioners take this discussion to the governor's office and to Rolanda or Lacey, and have this conversation and say what's going on here. And funny because this is a very valuable commission, and I'm so honored to work with you all. You're just like the most amazing people. I took notes today. It just kind of gave me tears in my eyes, and hearing everybody's stories, and all the heart and commitment is beautiful. And I took a lot of notes because I don't think anybody on what some of the goals, what people's goals are, and there's a thread that runs through them all. And I think that that'll be something really important for us to follow up on. So I will gather those together and start writing those up, and you all can, take some time to look through them, because these are some super important priorities for the youth we're serving. And we're in such a time where it's vitally necessary. And all of us, those working in child welfare and those working in commissions, do what we can to support people throughout the state, especially those most vulnerable. So I appreciate working with you all. You're incredible.
So we're a little bit over, but I feel like today's meeting was really good. I want to give everybody a chance to have any closing statements, anything they want to let us know before we hop off though. Jesse, Malik, anything? Matt, Chico?
Yeah, I'll just speak up. I side with you guys as well about the way that they're trying to it feels like they're trying to tie our hands to be able to do the work that we were designed to do. And my perspective is you can't create nothing for us without us, is the motto that in some of the stuff that I do, that we center our work and our perspective. And so however that looks like, I walk alongside you guys, and I'd like to be part of the conversation or just in support of, and to continue that pushback against our system, because we're here for a reason, and it's to create a better system. So I stand alongside you all.
Yeah. And
Can-
the governor's office can say no, which they have.
Right.
So we did the process. They were able to say no. We've all moved on. Just so interesting that we're now creating all this drama. But
Or just because I feel like this is a really big, really serious issue that's really impacting a lot of folks' feelings about being in this space and what the outcomes could be long term. I know that we are rules about meetings and communication with multiple committee members, but it does seem like something that everybody here is on the same page about. And I'm curious if there's an opportunity to via email schedule like another meeting that or add additional time to the next one where we just really focus on this conversation. And during that time, I know you can't reach out, but me and Casey can draft some emails to send to folks that we think should be in that space to really hear and get feedback. If that would be helpful, or even just making another public meeting. I don't know. Just wanted to put that out there because I feel like this is going to be a larger conversation.
Malik, are you saying like a specific meeting about this whole how we bring members on and invite like Lacey and
Yeah.
Rachel and okay. I'm
Yeah.
for that. Yes. I would love that.
Okay. And that would just, we would just have to make that, we'd have to make a notice, correct, to make it a public meeting and all that stuff. Okay.
Yeah, you just,
Yeah.
I could set your meeting up. I don't have to attend it, but I could set it up. You can let me know when you want to have it. We public notice it, and then you can, I can give you the Zoom link so that you can then invite the attendees. You know, definitely you'd want to, I think, invite Rolanda and Lacey and you know, and Rachel, obviously they're the important ones. But just to, because I think, you know, nothing really happens unless a good conversation, and maybe all of this is something very easily solved with conversation.
Yeah.
So then, Casey, do you want to work with me to just draft some reaching out to them and set something up? And then once they are confirmed with some stuff, we can follow up with some meeting dates to folks. And then once that's confirmed, reach out to Ellen to get that noticed, get the meeting noticed, and then go from there.
Good. Real quick, the last couple people, Matt, Judge Jaco, did either of you have any closing comments?
I think having an input in who our members are is crucial. I think that it's crazy that they would try and take that away from us, or to have DHS choose our members. It's like there's not a point in having a commission that has diverse voices and input if we aren't allowed to give input that's contrary to what the agency wants to do. And if they would have gotten our input before they proposed some of those things, it could have gone a lot differently last session, I think. Rather than just say, this is happening, we want you to get on board. That's how I feel like it was. I have to go, guys. I have a dentist appointment.
Go ahead and close this meeting. Thank you, everybody. I hope that you saw today as valuable. You know, I think we accomplished kind of what we wanted to accomplish, which was getting some information, learning a little bit more about how these commissions operate, in terms of what our limitations are, and then really just getting to know each other better, and what drives us. So, really appreciate everybody taking 3 hours out of their morning for this. Yeah, I just appreciate the work that all of you do. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Ellen, are we going to stay on?
You're muted.
Yeah, I can stay on. I can stay on with you, Pam. Yeah. Or you know what? How about I just I'll just give you a quick call. Is that
Okay, that works.
Tired of seeing myself on the panel.